Chapter 463. Duke Jing was in so much pain that his face turned white as he broke out in cold sweat. "Lowly person! How dare you attack this king? I'm going to kill you! Kill you!" He was in so much pain that he sucked in a breath of cold air. At the same time, he yelled at the predators behind him, "Why aren't you capturing this lowly commoner for this king? This prince will bring him back to the palace." However, none of those people dared to take even half a step forward. Yu Qi-peng also lowered his head, pretending that he did not see the scene. Yi Qing Luo's brows rose in interest as she kept her feather fan and returned to her own team. Who is this young man? He's not even afraid of offending his highness. But Yu Qi-peng is as cowardly as a dog. Yan Xiaoyi stared at the youth, her eyes filled with curiosity. And Ruo Pen bit her lips as she pondered for a moment. "I've investigated before. The Mercenary Association's president is surnamed Mo, and Yu Qi-peng calls him Young Master Mo. Then this person should be the president's son, the Mercenary Association's Young Master Mo Hans Hang. The Young Master of the Mercenary Guild? No wonder Yu Qi-peng was terrified. Yan Xiaoyi blinked her eyes and her lips curled into a teasing smile. No matter how powerful eldest young Master Yu Qi is, if he wants to establish a mercenary group and mingle in the mercenary union, in front of young Master Mo, he has to behave himself and be honest. Yi Qing Luo laughed lightly. These words were indeed true. Although Yu Qi-peng was the first young master of one of the four great, profound practitioner clans, the Yu Qi family, Yu Qi-peng's strength was far from ordinary. But in the mercenary guild, he could only be the leader of the predators. If he were to walk out of the mercenary association and not establish any mercenary group, then his status would be above Mo Hanshang's. But he wanted the Iron Blood Warriors, he wanted this mercenary group. Then Mo Hanshang would be his superior, and he had the rights to tell Yu Qi-peng what to do. This was the authority of the mercenary union. "Qing Luo, do you know young Patriarch Mo?" Yan Xiaoyi asked curiously. Yi Qing Luo shook her head. "If he doesn't know us, then why would he help us?" Yi Qing Luo shrugged her shoulders, indicating that she had no solution. Mo Hanshang's appearance was not within her expectations. But from the looks of it, Mo Hanshang didn't have any ill intentions towards them. His vision then turned towards Mo Hanshang and the others. With one hand placed behind his back, his posture was elegant and calm as his eyes were filled with ridicule as he glanced sideways at Duke Jing, who was hugging his hands and crying out. He was very calm, completely disregarding the other party's identity. That's right, the predators are really amazing. Mo Hanshang's rosy red lips curled slightly as a cold arc of ridicule flashed past. Since the Iron Blood Warriors are so powerful, I believe that eldest young Master Yu Qi doesn't need the Mercenary Association and will be able to build your own team. When these words came out, Yu Qi-peng's face completely darkened. He took large strides to Duke Jing's side as he lifted his clothes and threw it towards the group of members behind him. "Young Lord Mo, Duke Jing has just left the palace and doesn't know anything about the outside world. If he had offended young Lord Mo, I apologize on his behalf." "Duke Jing?" Mo Hanshang narrowed his eyes as he shot a glance at Duke Jing's direction as he scoffed. No wonder eldest young master was so arrogant these few days. "So you've colluded with the imperial family." These words made Yu Qi-peng's face turn green and white. Since Duke Jing's brain isn't working well, then this young patriarch shall be magnanimous and not be calculative with you. Mo Hanshang seemed as though he didn't see Yu Qi-peng's gloomy expression as he continued talking. "Let's do it like this. Eldest young Master Yu Qi, just apologize to these people and beg for their forgiveness, and this matter will be over." Chapter 464. The surrounding mercenary groups all sucked in a breath of cold air. Most of the mercenaries had heard of the predators before. Let's not talk about the reputation of the Iron Blood Warriors outside. Just recently, Yu Chi-peng had been recruiting cultivators and even hooked up with Duke Jing to inject funds into the mercenary group. It was obvious that they were going to register a mercenary group. The other mercenary groups would naturally pay more attention and understand them. Hence, they had some understanding of Yu Chi-peng's way of doing things. Asking him to apologize to this group of unknown brats? Do I have to beg for their forgiveness? This was no different from slapping him in the face in front of everyone. Yu Chi-peng had just registered his mercenary group today, and if he were to apologize to Yi Qing Luo and the others and beg sincerely, then the Iron Blood Warriors would not be able to raise their heads in the mercenary association in future. But Mo Hanshang was obviously grabbing onto Yu Chi-peng and not letting go. This sentence seemed reasonable, but in reality, it forced Yu Chi-peng into a dilemma. One was to offend Mo Hanshang. One was the pride of the predators. Right now, Yu Chi-peng's heart was filled with resentment. Why did Mo Hanshang suddenly appear? To help that bunch of brats. What was the identity of this group of young men and women? Yu Chi-peng thought back to when he was in the marketplace. He had handpicked over 100 profound practitioners, but in front of the 4 young ladies, they were so weak that they could not even withstand a single blow. Their tacit cooperation was as if they knew each other's movements. This was definitely not a tacit understanding that could be developed overnight. At that time, he only wanted to register as a mercenary group so that he could be the first to take on the new rare mission. After seeing the 4 girls' skills, in order to save time and register as a mercenary group as soon as possible, he stopped in time. Yu Chi-peng saw that these young girls were dressed in the same attire, and there were many young boys and girls in the same attire walking back and forth. And the only way to the market was through the mercenary guild. Yu Chi-peng guessed that these youngsters wanted to register as a mercenary group. Because of this, he made use of his own identity and sufficient benefits to bribe the 2 guards, preventing Yi Qing Luo and the rest from entering the mercenary association to register their mercenary group. A strong intuition told Yu Chi-peng that if these people were to register as a mercenary group, it would definitely become a hindrance to the predators. He had painstakingly spent a huge amount of energy and money to build the predators. They vowed to become the number 1 mercenary group in the world. He would not allow anything to go wrong. Everything was going according to plan. But out of nowhere, Mo Hanshang, this Chun Yao Jin, appeared. What? Young Master Yu Chi is unwilling? Mo Hanshang's brows rose as he teasingly curled his thin lips. I, Mo Hanshang, hate people who play tricks in my mercenary association the most. He paused, the smile on his face revealing a bit of eerie coldness. In particular, eldest young Master Yu Chi killed my guard in front of my face. When Mo Hanshang said to this point, he intentionally dragged out the last syllable as he stopped his voice. The corners of Yu Chi-peng's mouth twitched, his entire body trembling incessantly from anger. No matter how good he usually was at hiding his emotions, he could not hide the anger on his face at this moment. Young Master Yu Chi, even if you stare your eyes out, it won't help. Mo Hanshang gave a cold laugh, as his voice suddenly turned as cold as ice, bribing the guards in the mercenary association, obstructing other groups from registering as mercenary groups, and even killing the guards. Just based on these 2 points, this young patriarch has the authority to chase you out of the mercenary association. You'll be blacklisted by the mercenary union. Chapter 465. In other words, the Predator mercenary group was destroyed, completely destroyed. Young Master Mo, no matter what, I am the young master of the Yu Chi family. You should at least give face to the Yu Chi family. The veins on Yu Chi-peng's forehead bulged as he clenched his fists tightly, enduring the anger that filled his chest. I spit. Mo Hanshang spat out fiercely as he gave a disdainful snort. Face? If this young lord were to kill someone from your Yu Chi family and then ask you for face, would you *King give me face? Yu Chi-peng's face flushed red, his eyes filled with malice. You don't give Yu Chi-peng face. but you have to give this king face. This duke is Uncle Monarch's most doted duke." When Duke Jing heard that, he hurriedly opened his throat to roar. Emo Han Shang sneered, "Your face is even less valuable." Duke Jing's expression instantly changed as he bared his fangs and brandished his claws as he pounced towards Emo Han Shang. Yu Chi Peng forcefully held him back as he ordered the Iron Blood Warriors members to grab hold of Duke Jing. Just as he was in a terrible predicament, a clear and melodious voice rang out. "Young Master Emo, why don't you give me some face and leave this matter to me?" At the entrance of the mercenary guild, a woman in a black outfit walked in. A sweet smile blossomed on her face. Her appearance was stunning, and her temperament was extraordinary, especially that pair of enchanting eyes, which shone with an intoxicating charm. Yu Chi Peng frowned and stared coldly at the girl in front of him. With a single glance, he recognized that she was the most ruthless woman in the marketplace. Yi Qing Luo calmly met Captain Chi Peng's gaze, step by step, walking gracefully and slowly unperturbed. The instant Emo Han Shang saw Yi Qing Luo, the cold arrogance on his face turned into a handsome and clean smile. "Since young miss has opened her mouth, this young patriarch naturally has to give it to you. So I'll leave it to you to handle. If eldest young Master Yuchi isn't willing to accept your handling, then let this young patriarch handle it personally." He emphasized the last 4 words. Clearly, he was warning Yu Chi Peng. Or, follow Yi Qing Luo's instructions. Otherwise, he would follow his method and enter the blacklist. The surrounding mercenary groups stared at Yi Qing Luo in astonishment, as they were totally certain that Emo Han Shang's appearance this time round was to stand up for Yi Qing Luo. Everyone was silently guessing. What was this Yi Qing Luo's identity? From her looks, could it be that young Master Emo was young Master Emo Han Shang? When this thought flashed past their minds, many mercenary groups started. From how Emo was protecting this young lady, there was this possibility. Yi Qing Luo didn't bother about what the others thought. Yi Qing Luo couldn't be bothered to guess why Emo Han Shang helped her. "Yi Dragon Master Yang Shang, Lees," she said. "You got," he did, said, he said. "You, I said he." With that said, she shook her head with a look of pity. "Young Master Yuchi, you just need to apologize to my party and hand over the first mission you've accepted. That will do. Yi. Chin Yi. Chi Yu. Yi. Ling. Shi." He thought. He. 2. Apparently, he was anxious to register his mercenary group in the Mercenary Association. From those stall owners' words, it was obvious that Iron Blood Warriors had existed for a long time. They had never registered their mercenary group. But at this moment, the reason was so urgent. There was a possibility that Yu Chi Peng had heard some news, and there would be a mission today which made Yu Chi Peng interested. Chapter 466. As expected, after she mentioned Yu Chi Peng handing over the mission, Yu Chi Peng's expression turned steely green. The pair of venomous eyes stared fiercely at Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo's long eyelashes fluttered as she innocently tilted her head. "Eldest young Master Yuchi, why are you staring at me for? I'm giving you a way out of this embarrassing situation. If you're not willing, then just treat it as though I didn't say anything." That spirited eyes twinkled as they were clear and moist. That look, no matter how one looked at it, it seemed as though she was doing the Iron Blood Warriors good, especially making a compromise. When the surrounding mercenary groups saw the young lady's aggrieved look, their sympathy immediately overflowed as they all stood up for Yi Qing Luo. "This young lady has already taken a step back. Eldest young Master Yuchi, you should also take a step back. It's just a mission. Giving it to this young lady to protect your own mercenary group isn't a huge loss. The Iron Blood Warriors killed people in the Mercenary Association and instigated the guards to stop these young ladies from entering the Mercenary Association. This has already violated the Mercenary Association's regulations and can totally be blacklisted. Iron Blood warriors are taking advantage of us? It wasn't easy for this young lady to establish a mercenary group. As the eldest young master of the Yuchi family, why must he be calculative with a young lass? These mercenary groups were mostly boorish people. On one side was a mercenary group with a strong backing and the royal family's investment. On the other side, there was a small group of yellow profound realm Xian practitioners who had come out of nowhere. Naturally, everyone's scales were tilted towards the weaker side, especially when Yi Qing Luo's looks were peerless and she put on an innocent look. How would these mercenary groups remember the scene of Yi Qing Luo interrogating the guards earlier? The crowd's discussions made Yuchi Peng's face turn steely green and gradually turn pale. Yuchi Peng was very clear on how important reputation was to a mercenary group. If he were to give up on the Iron Blood warriors and never step into the Mercenary Association ever again, he absolutely could not do it. The Iron Blood warriors had spent so much effort, and only he himself knew the hardships involved. How could he bear to? But this mission, rare grade mission, if he were to hand it over, wouldn't it be a waste of time for him to bring his team to the Mercenary Union to register? Yuchi Peng, I feel that what they said makes sense. Duke Jing was grabbed by a few members, and by now he had calmed down quite a bit as he finally became smart for once. Think about it, apologize and hand over this mission. At least our Iron Blood warriors will be saved. There would always be rare missions in the future. But if we really let young Master Mo blacklist the Predator, we won't be able to keep our current mission. Duke Jing's words were right on point. Yuchi Peng naturally understood this logic. But if they apologized, they would be lowering their heads to a small, unknown team. The reputation and prestige of the Predators would be greatly damaged. It also indirectly admitted that the Predators were causing trouble in the Mercenary Guild. This stain would always be with the Predators. Even if the Predators became the #1 mercenary group in the future, it would become a dark history for others to laugh at. As for this small team, but because of his magnanimity today, his name would spread throughout the mercenary world. Famous, a good reputation. Yuchi Peng's pupils suddenly constricted. He suddenly raised his head and stared at Yi Qing Luo's bright, smiling face as his heart tightened. Chapter 467. Mo Han Shang's appearance gave Yi Qing Luo a chance. Eldest young Master Yuchi and Duke Jing's face was something which Mo Han Shang totally disregarded. But unfortunately, the minute Yi Qing Luo opened her mouth, Mo Han Shang was beaming with joy, and he even stood up for Yi Qing Luo without any reason. Yi Qing Luo's solution sounded as though she was wholeheartedly thinking for the Iron Blood warriors. She only wanted to turn the big problem into a small one and the small one into nothing. Moreover, she put on a saintly look, willing to forgive everything which they had done. But, in actual fact, the one who benefited the most from this matter was Yi Qing Luo's group. Not only had they obtained this rare mission, they were also able to create a good reputation for their own mercenary group. From today onwards, there would probably be many mercenary groups in the mercenary world who were willing to be on good terms with this mercenary group which was formed by young lads. As for himself, Iron Blood warriors was the staircase which Yi Qing Luo had climbed up. Yuchi Peng asked himself that he was adept in scheming, but today he had fallen into the hands of a young lass. Till now he was still unable to tell that between Mo Han Shang and Yi Qing Luo. Had they long known each other? His heart was filled with unwillingness, but Yuchi Peng could only bear with it. Finally he gave in. No matter what, the Iron Blood warriors must be preserved. Where there's life, there's hope. A bunch of kids who hadn't even grown their hair. He would deal with them in the future. Yuchi Peng clenched his teeth tightly as he took out a scroll from his bosom and threw it into Duke Jing's arms. Go! Duke Jing caught the scroll as he looked at Yuchi Peng in a daze. It took some time before he realized that he was asking him to apologize to Yi Qing Luo. Persuading was one thing, but to ask him, a dignified duke, to lower his head and apologize was another matter. His wrist was broken by Emo Han Shang, and he still wanted him to apologize? He had never suffered such humiliation in his entire life. Duke Jing, you're a duke and your face is bigger than mine. If you go, then it will show your sincerity. It will also show your status among the Iron Blood Warriors. Yu Qi-peng saw that Duke Jing's expression wasn't right as he lowered his voice and said that. Duke Jing was coaxed till he was elated and immediately had no more opinions. Holding the scroll, he walked towards Yi Qing Luo, and Duke Jing directly passed it over with a black face. The mission is for you and... For today's matter, this duke represents the Iron Blood Warriors to apologize to you. What a simple-minded fellow. Yi Qing Luo snorted coldly and kept the scroll in her hand. She hadn't established a mercenary group yet, so she couldn't open the mercenary guild's mission scroll. Earlier Duke Jing and Yu Qi-peng's conversation, she had heard it all. It seemed like her guess was right. The reason why Yu Qi-peng hurriedly registered his mercenary group was because of this mission. Rare quest. He didn't know what level the mission was. But looking at the general standard of the Iron Blood Warriors, these youths in Devil class were definitely above them. Since Yu Qi-peng dared to accept this mission, he definitely had a well-thought-out plan. Since that was the case, the youths in Devil class should also be able to complete it. Yi Qing Luo kept the mission into her bosom as her eyes were filled with a smile. So Duke Jing is the Iron Blood Warriors group leader. When Yu Qi-peng heard this sentence, he gritted his teeth in anger. He took a deep breath. His expression was stiff and ashen as he walked over with large strides. His pair of cold eyes were filled with a biting, cold, killing intent. I, the leader of the Iron Blood Warriors, apologize to your team. A sneer flashed past Yi Qing Luo's eyes. Chapter 468. Say? What could he say? What else could he say? He had many objections. However, he could only suppress these objections in his heart. This little slut, did she think that with Emo Han Shang as her backing, she could do whatever she wanted? Look at that expression. If I didn't know better, I would have thought that eldest young Master Yu Qi was preparing to find someone to kill me after I leave the Mercenary Association to snatch the mission scroll. Yi Qing Luo pursed her pink lips, as her quick-witted eyes were mixed with a sliver of fear. The surrounding mercenaries nodded in agreement. This kind of thing was not unheard of. Everyone could tell that Yu Qi-peng's emotions were currently in a violent rage. Apparently he had a deep grudge against Yi Qing Luo. In front of Emo Han Shang, in order to ensure that his Iron Blood Warriors could continue on, he would lower his head to Yi Qing Luo. But what if he left the mercenary guild? How is that possible? Yu Qi-peng's face darkened, and he had the embarrassment of having his thoughts seen through. He shifted his gaze and raised his voice as he roared in panic. Yu Qi-peng, I'm the eldest young master of the Yu Qi family. I still have this bit of credibility. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled into a cold smile. She was waiting for Yu Qi-peng to say the sentence. Emo Han Shang's palms clapped as he placed it on Yu Qi-peng's shoulder. Since that's the case, this young patriarch will believe you. In future, if anything happens to this bunch of young mercenary groups, this young patriarch will just place all onto the Iron Blood Warriors. That's the happy decision. The veins on Yu Qi-peng's forehead throbbed. His face was completely devoid of any color. His eyes were already burning with rage, shooting out an intense fury. This was simply going too far. Just by looking at Yi Qing Luo, who was the leader, one could tell that if this mercenary group was really established, it would absolutely not be a group that knew their place. In the future, he would definitely make many enemies. What's more, as a mercenary group, it was inevitable that something unexpected would happen when they were on a mission. Could it be that the predators had to take the blame for all this? This was simply forcing them, the Iron Blood Warriors, to protect Yi Qing Luo and the others' safety. Too treacherous, too sinister. Mo Hanshang seemed as though he couldn't see Yu Qi Peng's rage burning as he directly turned his head towards Yi Qing Luo, and his voice was clear and bright. "Young lady, aren't you going to register your mercenary group? Go and line up with your brothers." Yi Qing Luo cupped her hands in greeting as her lips curled into a grateful smile. "Many thanks to young Patriarch Mo for being impartial and selfless, helping us brothers to obtain the opportunity to register a mercenary group. The Mercenary Guild exists to provide the best and most convenient service to all mercenary groups." Mo Hanshang waved his hand. "One person's strength, no matter what, cannot be compared to the strength of an entire team. I hope that the Mercenary Association will be able to personally witness one strong team after another being established here, to achieve glory here." Yi Qing Luo nodded in agreement. She and Mo Hanshang had the same viewpoint. No matter how strong a single person was, he couldn't be stronger than a team. Yi Qing Luo's eyes lit up with a spark of conviction as her face beamed with smiles as she turned her head to look at the entrance, at those brothers and sisters. "Brothers, the team that belongs to us is officially established. He belongs to our team. Our team." Deafening voices came from the mouths of these boys and girls. Those young faces were filled with trust towards Yi Qing Luo. In their bodies, their blood was boiling. Chapter 469. Long Yunjian was slightly stunned, looking at Yi Qing Luo's outstretched hands. His heart inexplicably sped up. Strange, why was his face suddenly burning up? He was a human dragon, and by right, his body temperature should always maintain a certain temperature. How could it possibly be burning up? Long Yunjian was still in a daze when Yan Xiao used her elbow to nudge him. "Class monitor, what are you in a daze for? Are you too happy?" Long Yunjian instantly regained his senses as his azure blue eyes blinked. Suddenly, he realized something as his gaze shot towards Yi Qing Luo's direction, and following that, he raised his eyes to look at the man beside him. Mo Xian's eyes were calm as he crossed his arms in front of his chest, and a pair of bewitching peach blossom eyes stared at Yi Qing Luo. That gaze seemed to be able to see everything in the world, and he could only see Yi Qing Luo alone. Long Yunjian's heart twitched fiercely with an indescribable, strange feeling. He frowned. Why was it that recently? His body seemed to be not right, especially after Yi Qing Luo was assassinated and he revealed his blue dragon original form to save Yi Qing Luo. Something was amiss. Could it be? Was because he had transformed into a blue dragon? Long Yunjian bore with this strange feeling as he walked towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. Standing beside Yi Qing Luo, he slowly raised his eyes. His gaze was extremely indifferent, and his voice was as indifferent as usual. "I had always wanted to bring my brothers to charge out for the #1 spot that belongs to us, to let you stand at the highest point and announce to the world that you are absolutely not trash." That calm voice, when he said these words, the excitement and joy on the youngsters' faces started to burn even more. "Now, it's time for us to take the first step towards our goal, to establish a mercenary group that belongs to us, our home." The youngsters' trembling voices once again rang deafeningly. "We pledge our lives to follow group leader." The youngsters' four gazes met, and in each other's eyes they saw the firm belief. They believed that one day in the future they would be able to get rid of the title of trash and be revered by the world. This scene also influenced the surrounding mercenaries. What was the motive for everyone to establish a mercenary group in the first place? What was their original intention? After going through the wear and tear of time, experiencing the test of reality, in the end, the so-called mercenary group had already become a job to support their families. These youngsters were all emitting the ray of hope. He could see hope in them. Perhaps, after these youths formed their own mercenary group, they would be able to help them find the original intentions they had when they first formed their own mercenary group. Yi Qing Luo's charming eyes were filled with smiles as she tugged Long Yunjian's sleeve. The two of them walked together into the main hall and lined up behind those registered mercenary groups. Perhaps because of this interlude, the atmosphere in the mercenary guild fell into a strange sense of urgency. Everywhere was burning, that kind of blood-boiling feeling. The registrar deftly dealt with the people who came to register one after another, and after a cup of tea's time, it was Yi Qing Luo and Long Yun Zhan's turn. The registrar gave Long Yun Zhan a piece of white paper, which required the leader to fill in the registration information. When he saw the first column, Long Yun Zhan glanced sideways at Yi Qing Luo, mercenary group's name. Name? The meaning was, she came up with names? Yi Qing Luo wanted to ask him to think about the name himself. But thinking of Long Yun Zhan's character, he would probably find it troublesome and directly write a devil class. Then, she would be tipsy. You. What name do you want? She could not bring herself to ask the last few words. Chapter 470. Because when Yi Qing Luo raised her eyes, she saw those 60 youngsters outside the main hall, staring at her fervently. Their eyes were filled with hope. They had passed their faith to Yi Qing Luo. Suddenly, there was a heavy feeling on his shoulders. However, this kind of heaviness made her feel satisfied. Yi Qing Luo's gaze finally fell onto Di-Mo Xian. Their four eyes met, and she saw the gentleness and encouragement in Di-Mo Xian's eyes. This mercenary group's name would be decided by her. Yi Qing Luo's pink lips trembled as her slightly trembling voice slowly rang. The world. We will carve out a world that belongs to us. Her smile grew bigger by the corner of her lips, enchanting like a blooming rose. I'll promise you a world. Her slender wrist lifted up as Yi Qing Luo stretched out her index finger, and in midair, one stroke at a time, she wrote down the two words the world. The World Group, the World Mercenary Group. This was their mercenary group's name. What they promised was the entire world. The youngsters' eyes sparkled as they clenched their fists and raised their arms up high, shouting excitedly, "The World Mercenary Group! The World Mercenary Group! Our world!" The deafening roar was filled with passion that infected one's heart. The surrounding mercenaries couldn't help but followed along and shouted out this name. The corners of Long Yun Zhan's mouth curled into a smile on his usually cold and indifferent face. He raised his pen and wrote the World Mercenary Group in the name column. The world that Yi Qing Luo promised. The world that belonged to them. After the mercenary group application form was filled, the registrar's information was stored in the Mercenary Association's memory stone. The memory stone flickered for a few times and a palm-sized badge surfaced. The registrar used a secret technique to draw on the badge twice before passing it over to Long Yun Zhan. This badge represented the World Mercenary Group's symbol. The badge was worn by the group leader. This badge could be used to set up the vice group leader, law enforcement group leader, finance group leader, etc. Once it was set up, the badge would produce a badge which represented the set-up position. The newly established mercenary group was an ordinary mercenary group, and the maximum number of people could only accommodate 100 people. Because of that, this group leader badge could at most produce 100 member badges, which included various positions. If a mercenary group wanted to be promoted to a bronze mercenary group, they would have to accept a mission, obtain mercenary group honor points, and then apply to the registrar for an upgrade. It was said that there were too many restrictions and regulations in a mercenary group. However, becoming a mercenary group was much more convenient than forming your own team and traveling around. The reason why Yi Qing Luo chose to form a mercenary group from Devil classes students was because of convenience. With the badge, as long as they didn't leave Three Spring City, they could communicate with the mercenary group at any time. It was also commonly known as 1,000-mile sound transmission. However, conversing required strong mental power and profound energy. Moreover, when a mercenary group accepted a mission, they could obtain detailed information about the mission. For example, the mission location, difficulty, and the general situation of the mission would be clearly marked. This way, Long Yunjan only needed to consider the strength of the team and choose whether to accept the mission or not. At the very least, it was better than leading a group of people blindly out for experiential training. If the place they went for experiential training exceeded their expectations, their lives would be in danger. Moreover, after the mercenary group completed the mission, they would receive a generous reward from the person who issued the mission. These rewards weren't just money. There would also be many rare treasures, medicinal herbs, and pills. In short, there would definitely be rewards corresponding to the difficulty of the mission. Chapter 471. The World Group? Not bad, not bad, a good name. Emo Hanshang clapped his hands and praised. This world. This young patriarch is also interested. Do you want to count this young patriarch in? Everyone was stunned by his words. The dignified young master of the mercenary guild wanted to join an unknown mercenary group made up of a bunch of brats? Could it be that he was completely infected by the passion of these youths? If Emo Hanshang really joined this world mercenary group, then this mercenary group would be incredible. He could do whatever he wanted in the mercenary guild. At this moment, Yuchi Peng and the others who were standing by the side had ashen faces, as though they were about to explode. Emo Hanshang's intervention had already caused the Iron Blood Warriors to completely lose their face. Even now, their faces were still burning with pain. Emo Hanshang actually wanted to join the mercenary group established by those youngsters? What kind of F***king luck did these little bitches have? If it was any other mercenary group, once they heard that the young master of the mercenary guild wanted to join their group, they would be overjoyed and welcome the young master to join. However, the young mercenaries who had won the first prize did not have the slightest bit of excitement on their faces. Yi Qingluo's eyes narrowed slightly as her slender brows creased, as she scrutinized Emo Hanshang. From the moment this person appeared, he stood on their side and stood up for her without any reason. Yi Qingluo didn't believe that it was because Emo Hanshang couldn't stand seeing people doing tricks in the Mercenary Association, or any other simple reason like that. No one will be good to you for no reason. This so-called good was a mixture of motives and benefits, especially strangers. Yi Qingluo raised her eyes slightly. Give me a reason. The surrounding mercenaries were about to vomit blood. Damn it! Young Master Mo joining their mercenary group was like gold falling from the sky and smashing in front of them. What reason was there to ask? Directly put the badge on young Master Mo. Their inner roars didn't affect Yi Qingluo at all. As the group leader, Long Yunjan, with a pair of azure blue eyes, stared at Emo Hanshang indifferently, as though he was waiting for his reply. I was there too. I saw everything. Emo Hanshang's handsome brows twitched. The smile on his handsome face was very clean. Your way of doing things suits my taste. He saw everything? Did he see them fighting the predators? All right. There's no problem in letting you join the world group. Yi Qingluo tilted her head and raised a finger. But because of your young patriarch Mo's identity, you must promise us a condition. What condition? After joining the world group, you will be an ordinary member of the world group. Emo Hanshang joining the world group was beneficial to the world group. Moreover, he was wholeheartedly trying to help her and had automatically raised the request to join the world group. So by right, Yi Qingluo should agree to it. However, the ugly words had to be said first. If Emo Hanshang were to make use of his mercenary association's young master's name to disrupt the world group's order, then she would absolutely not fear this young master's identity. When he made his move, he would definitely not hold back. This condition made the surrounding mercenaries envious and jealous, but at the same time they couldn't help but want to strangle Yi Qingluo to death. All of them sighed helplessly. Children were still children. Establishing a mercenary group was just for fun. Such a good opportunity was presented to him, but he didn't know how to grasp it and even wanted to negotiate with young Master Mo if they were able to invite young Patriarch Mo into their own group. Even if they were to give him the position of vice group leader, they would be willing. Just as everyone was sighing, they heard Mo Han Shang, who had an arrogant look when facing Yuchi Peng earlier, chuckling as he spat out 3 words, "No problem." Everyone, what the heck? Chapter 472. After registering the mercenary group, Mo Han Shang invited them to use the Mercenary Association's guest hall to rest. The conference hall was large enough to accommodate about 400 people. Benches were arranged in rows around the room. The 60 or so youths found a place to sit. A dozen attendants came over with teacups and poured a cup of tea for everyone. Long Yunjan took the commander's medal and split it into a vice commander's medal and an executive commander's medal. The rest were all member badges. After this vice group leader badge was taken out, the youngster's vision immediately shot towards Yi Qing Luo. The mercenary group was suggested by Yi Qing Luo, and ever since she joined the Devil class, many principles were taught by Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo's kindness towards them was something that they could all see. Vice leader Yi Qing Luo was the most suitable candidate. Xiao Jin, who was seated opposite Yi Qing Luo, hooked Yan Xiaoyi's shoulder with one hand as he shook his head and wailed, "Sai, this bunch of little brats, when Qing Luo wasn't around, they treated me like a treasure. But after Qing Luo came, I'm just a blade of grass." "Who asked you to be ugly?" Yan Xiao rolled her eyes and slapped the hand on her shoulder. "Take it away!" "We're all men. What's wrong with a shoulder?" Xiao Jin felt the pain on the back of his hand. He covered his hand and retracted it. "You're like a girl. No wonder you also became a blade of grass. You're the F** king sissy. I am a woman to begin with. Who's a man with you?" Yan Xiao stood up abruptly and slapped Xiao Jin's face that wasn't considered handsome. Xiao Jin stood up from the chair in shock, one hand covering his face while the other supporting himself on the chair in front of him. With a flip, he leaped over the long bench and rushed towards Long Yunjan. "Look at you, how are you a woman? Boss, save me." The two's antics had livened up the atmosphere in the hall. The youngsters' faces were filled with radiant smiles as their gazes wandered between Yi Qing Luo and Long Yunjan. In his heart, he was both excited and nervous. He had his own team, his own mercenary group, and his own belonging. However, at the same time, they were nervous. He was worried that he wasn't strong enough, worried that he would drag down the entire team. Sitting on the bench and looking at the member medals piled up on the table, they became more and more nervous. Xiao Jin and Yan Xiao Yi's banter relaxed the moods of these youths considerably. The position of vice commander is too important. With my personality, I can't take it. Yi Qing Luo pushed the vice group leader badge towards Long Yunjan's direction. "I'll be a small member. Pass the vice group leader badge to Jin Zi." Don't. If you hand it over to me, this bunch of brats will definitely kill me." Xiao Jin waved his hand. "Just take it. I'm actually quite interested in this executive captain position." His eyes were sharp and his hands were fast. He directly reached out and took the medal of the executive commander in his hand. F***CK. That's mine." Yan Xiaoyi's eyes narrowed, and she immediately rushed towards Xiao Jin to snatch the executive regiment commander's medal. Xiao Jin waved the medal in his hand at her, the corners of his mouth hooking up in a proud smile as he put the medal on his chest. The medal suddenly emitted a blue light. In an instant, the light had already covered Xiao Jin. "Slut Jin." Yan Xiao was so angry that she gritted her teeth. After the medal was put on his chest, this medal was bound to Xiao Jin. Chapter 473. F***CK. Scumbag Jin was indeed a scumbag. Yi Qing Luo looked at this pair of quarrelsome lovers as she couldn't help but laughed. "Xiao He, why don't I give you the assistant group leader's badge? In this way you will be his immediate boss." "Qing Luo, you can't do this," Xiao Jin exclaimed. Yan Xiao Yi stared at Xiao Jin before retracting her vision, and looking at Yi Qing Luo, she shook her head. In order to be his top boss, we have to sacrifice ourselves. It's really not worth it. This kind of arduous task, it's better to leave it to you. In the end, the vice group leader's badge still landed in Yi Qing Luo's hands. Right from the start, Yi Qing Luo had only intended to be a small member in the mercenary group. After all, her personality was indeed not suitable for the position of vice leader. Xiao Jin and Yan Xiao Yi were at least members of the Devil Class's class committee. After managing the Devil Class for such a long time, they should be the most suitable candidates. Take it. A clear and cold voice suddenly entered his ears. Long Yunjian, who was by her side, stared at Yi Qing Luo indifferently. Everyone wishes for you to be the vice group leader, and you have enough qualifications to be the vice group leader. So there's nothing suitable or not suitable about it. Yi Qing Luo was just about to speak when her waist suddenly tightened and she had already been pulled into D.Mo Xian's arms. Her face bumped into D.Mo Xian's broad chest. D.Mo Xian's other hand covered the back of her head. Lil Luo, no matter if it's a member or vice group leader, every single action of yours will represent the world group, and this is something that cannot be avoided. The man's clear voice was as mellow as fine wine. That word by word actually expressed all the worries in Yi Qing Luo's heart. After being together for so long, I believe your brothers must have some understanding of your personality. Since they chose you, it means that they trust you. You are a team, a mercenary team. D.Mo Xian's fingers gently caressed Yi Qing Luo's fine black hair. His actions were gentle and tender. No matter what you want to do in future, they will follow you, isn't that so? Yes. The 60 or so youths who were seated stood up one after another, their faces filled with determination. No matter what happens, we will always be a team. Somewhere in Yi Qing Luo's heart seemed to have been struck by something as it gradually softened. Her eyes were filled with tears. Her long, curly eyelashes trembled slightly, bringing out a drop of crystal clear water. She pursed her lips tightly. After a long while, she reached out her hand and held the medal that symbolized her position as the vice regiment commander in her hand. Since everyone trusts me so much, then I shall not be unreasonable. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled into a faint smile. Her slender fingers curled up the medal in her palm one by one. It was as if he wanted to brand the medal into his flesh and blood. When the youths saw that she accepted, they instantly let out a wave of cheers. Clear and sonorous voices resounded in the air above the living room. Vice Commander! Vice Commander! Vice Commander! The shouts gradually died down. Long Yunjian looked down at the youths in uniform, and an extremely faint smile gradually appeared on his face. After some time, he retracted his vision and returned to the main topic. Qing Luo, right from the start, you've been eyeing the Iron Blood Warrior's mission. Xiao Jin was still fooling around with Yan Xiao Yi when he heard about the mission. As for that mission, probably all the youths in the world group would want to know what it was. Based on Yi Qing Luo's character, she actually only asked for a mission which the other party didn't know about and let them off. Although this had already made the other party lose face, and the ones who gained the advantage were them. Chapter 474. That mission is a rare mission. Yi Qing Luo took out the mission scroll from her bosom as she placed it on the table. Her vision shot towards Emo Han Shang. Why don't young Patriarch Emo introduce what is called a rare mission? I've already joined the World Group, and now I'm an ordinary member of the World Group. Why are you still calling me young Patriarch? Emo Han Shang's brows rose as half his body leaned on the long chair. Call me Han Shang. This way it will make us seem closer. Yi Qing Luo complied with his intention. All right, Han Shang. As everyone knows, the Mercenary Association's missions are split into several grades according to the mercenary group's ability. Low grade, intermediate grade, high grade, and complicated grade missions. And among these grades, they are further divided into experience training missions and rare missions. Saying that, Emo Han Shang stood up as he walked to the center of the guest hall. He opened up his arms as he spoke excitedly. Experience training missions are the more common grade missions. Even if it's accepted by other mercenary groups today, there will be a new employer who will issue the same mission tomorrow. This is also the easiest grade mission to complete. Whereas rare missions are those mysterious clans similar to the 4 great clans for great sects and such large clans. They are very mysterious as they secretly look for the mercenary association to apply for this mission. These missions, generally speaking, if one could encounter it once, it would only happen once. So the rewards for rare missions are absolutely generous. But as compared to experience training missions, the difficulty is much higher. Everyone's eyes shone as they heard that. It was rare to encounter a rare mission. The first mission they received was a rare mission. He did not know what level of rare mission this was. Qing Luo, how did you know that Iron Blood warriors had received a rare mission? Shao Jin finally understood the reason why the vengeful Yi Qing Luo gave up on punishing Yu Qipeng because of a mission. Yi Qing Luo explained her guess towards Yu Qipeng in a concise and comprehensive manner and immediately explained, "Who said I'm going to let Yu Qipeng off?" Iron Blood warriors had just registered as a mercenary group today and had already lost all their face. They will definitely not be able to have a smooth journey in the near future. Furthermore, with Han Shang's words earlier, even if they are angry, they won't dare to make a move on us. Her eyes were curved as it flashed a crafty smile. This is even more torturous than killing them. Moreover, if we let him off, the world group's good name would at least be known in the mercenary world. How black-bellied. How treacherous. If we were to discuss who is the old fox in the world group, if Qing Luo is second, no one dares to claim to be first. Qiao Jin and Yan Xiao looked at each other and said in unison, "But we like it." Yi Qing Luo smiled as she picked up the scroll and opened it little by little. On the back of the scroll, there were 4 words, high-level quest. Holy SH*T, it's actually a high-level rare mission. This luck. Qiao Jin stared at the 4 words, unable to sit still in his chair. Yi Qing Luo placed the scroll on the table. The details of the mission were clearly written on the top of the scroll. Head to the Death God Castle and obtain the exquisite pagoda. After the mission is completed, the reward will be 500 gold coins, a bottle of Scarlet Dragon Dew, a stock of Profound Ice Immortal Root, a bundle of Infant Grass, and 150 Mercenary Group honor points. 500 gold coins. This was indeed a huge sum of money. There was also the Red Dragon Dew, which was a high-quality external injury medicine. With just a drop, it could immediately heal any wound on the body without leaving a single scar. This was a medicine that many female profound practitioners coveted. Chapter 475. Profound Ice Immortal Root, Infant Grass. These 2 medicinal herbs were exactly what Yi Qing Luo needed. She was already following beside Ghost Doctor, and if there were no accidents, she should be able to advance to the stage of a Grandmaster Alchemist in no time. By then, she would be able to refine the medicinal pill to restore Ziling's lame leg. These 2 medicinal herbs were one of the medicinal herbs needed to refine it. Just as Yi Qing Luo was thinking about these 2 medicinal herbs, everyone's vision and attention was concentrated on Death God Castle. Death God Castle. That was the grave of numerous cultivators. No, more accurately, it should be the grave of numerous thieves. Other than the guards there, no one could walk out of there alive. That place was named Death God Castle because there really was a death god inside. However, countless number of cultivators and bandits continued to swarm into Death God Castle because in Death God Castle, there were simply too many enviable and coveted treasures which they wanted to get their hands on. No one knew where this rumor came from. It was rumored that in ancient times the Upper Realm was at war. The realm of gods hid their treasures in Death God Castle, God Realm. That was the rumored place, the strongest existence in the upper realm. The treasures which they left behind, if one was able to obtain one, they would definitely be able to dominate the Nirvana realm. But that exquisite pagoda wasn't the so-called treasure, because Death God Castle was rumored to contain the God Realm's treasures. Because of that, many families placed their treasures in Death God Castle for safekeeping. No one knew who the castle lord of Death God Castle was, but they knew that the things which were placed in Death God Castle would absolutely not be stolen. This exquisite pagoda was something which a certain family placed in Death God Castle to store. Its function was similar to Heavenly Academy's Heavenly Pagoda, which could store people into the pagoda. The only difference was that Heavenly Pagoda created numerous spaces in the pagoda to allow students to cultivate and grow, whereas Exquisite Pagoda was an attack type. Once one was sucked into the Exquisite Pagoda, there was basically no way to walk out alive. Because of that, no one knew what was the situation inside the pagoda, which meant to say this high-grade rare mission was an extremely dangerous mission. Number 1. Death God Castle. It was basically impossible to barge into it. Even if one were to enter, one would not be able to come out alive. Secondly, the Exquisite Pagoda was too dangerous. If one didn't know how to use it and was accidentally sucked into the Exquisite Pagoda, one's life would be over. Damn it! No wonder the mission rewards were so bountiful. If we complete this mission, the mercenary honor points will be enough for us to be promoted to a bronze mercenary group. It should be known that the Mercenary Union had great restrictions on the promotion of mercenary groups. This was because every increase in level meant that the overall strength of the mercenary group would increase by 100-fold. Just like the World Group, which Yi Qing Luo had established now. In order to be promoted from an ordinary mercenary group to a bronze plate, they would need to complete at least 100 low-grade and intermediate-grade missions to accumulate 100 credit points before they could be promoted. The reward for this mission was 150 honor points. Simply savage. The problem is we can't complete it. The youths below all shook their heads in shock. They had all heard of the legends of Death God Castle. They had even heard that 10 years ago, the Nirvana Realm's #1 divine thief, after entering Death God Castle, there was no more news of him. Many of them were spreading rumors that this divine thief had died in Death God Castle. Even a professional thief like Divine Thief was unable to do it. So how could they possibly do it? Chapter 476. The mission to head to the Death God Castle. Even if it was a God-level mission, it would be considered normal. How could he have been assigned to a high-level mission? If a bronze or silver plate mercenary group were to accept such a mission, wouldn't that be sending them to their deaths? The mercenary guild would never make such a mistake. Moreover, what's even more strange is, why would Yuchi Peng accept this mission? Yi Qing Luo rubbed her chin as she slowly combed through her thoughts. The Iron Blood Warriors are still conserving their energy and recruiting their troops. But today, they hurriedly rushed over to register their mercenary group. Their motive is for this mission. Apparently, they already knew what the mission is. Knowing that he has to go to the Death God Castle to steal the Exquisite Pagoda, but he still chose this mission. This also means that he is extremely confident in this mission. Yi Qing Luo narrowed her eyes as a glint flashed past her eyes. That is to say, there are other ways to complete this mission. Even a mercenary group like the Predators has the confidence to complete this mission. For us, we shouldn't be able to. You are not allowed to go. The 3 cold words seemed to be wrapped in frost, freezing Yi Qing Luo. This voice shocked Yi Qing Luo. She turned her head in shock and looked at the man beside her. When she met the man's cold, black eyes that were like molten obsidian, all her words were stuck in her throat. He was angry. Yi Qing Luo had never seen Mo Xian so angry before. Just a pair of eyes was enough to make a person not even dare to make a sound. Ah Xian. After a long while, Yi Qing Luo braced herself and moved her little hand over bit by bit, grabbing onto Dmo Xian's wrist. She knew what Dmo Xian was angry about. Death God Castle was too dangerous. It was so dangerous that one could easily lose their life if they were not careful. The World Group's people were not strong to the point where they could come and go as they pleased in Death God Castle. Dmo Xian was worried about her, worried that she would be too stubborn and insist on completing this task. But she was not willing to give up on this rare mission. For Yuchi Peng to so confidently accept this task, there must be a way to complete it. What Yuchi Peng could do, she could definitely do it too. There was no time limit for this mission. It was not impossible for her to spend some time and ask around. Xian, there's no room for discussion. Dmo Xian's voice was cold as he suddenly stood up. Lil Luo, don't force me to bring you to the Imperial Palace. As soon as he finished speaking, he immediately strode out and left the guest room. When Yi Qing Luo chased after him, there were many people outside, but Dmo Xian was nowhere to be seen. If he didn't want her to find him, she couldn't find him no matter what. Yi Qing Luo's fingers were clenched so tightly that her round nails were embedded into her flesh. The atmosphere turned cold in an instant. Xiao Jin walked to the door and placed one hand on Yi Qing Luo's shoulder as he patted lightly. The Overlord is worried about you. Death God Castle is indeed too dangerous, and even if the Overlord is protecting you, there's no way to take care of everyone. That's right, Qing Luo. If the World Group were to enter Death God Castle together, if one of us is restricted, then there's a possibility that the entire group would be restricted. We all know your personality, much less the Dharch. Yan Xiao also followed over as she looked at Yi Qing Luo's despondent look as she sighed softly. Just based on one day of interaction, they could feel that Dmo Xian really loved Yi Qing Luo. His worry and concern for her didn't need any proof. Chapter 477. Although along the way, they did not see Dmo Xian make a move. But Yan Xiao and the others absolutely believed that if they really met an opponent whom Yi Qing Luo was unable to contend against, Dmo Xian would definitely be the first to block in front of Yi Qing Luo to protect her. If the place Yi Qing Luo wanted to go to had exceeded the protection range which he could predict, Dmo Xian would never allow her to go. Even if Dmo Xian could guarantee Yi Qing Luo's safety. But as long as one of the other brothers was injured, Yi Qing Luo would definitely not wash her hands of this. I know. Yi Qing Luo pursed her pink lips and lowered her eyelids slightly. I know he's worried about me. You know he's worried about you. He's not angry at you for no reason. Why are you still pulling a long face? Xiao Jin suddenly squeezed the hand on her shoulder. Don't pull a long face. The Dharch can't bear to be angry with you. Jin Zi, are you looking for a fight? Yi Qing Luo was in so much pain that she drew in a breath of cold air as she unhappily swatted away Xiao Jin's hand and retreated a few steps, massaging her shoulder. I'm advising you. Yi Qing Luo's hand, which was massaging her shoulder, gradually stopped. She bit her lower lip and said, I know he's worried about me, but are you guys willing to give up on the mission that's already in your hands? Even a team of Yuchi, Yaz, level has confidence. I feel that if we properly investigate, there might be a way to complete the mission without harming our lives. Yi Qing Luo's voice had just stopped. Suddenly, he heard a clear and sweet voice that carried a hint of coquettishness, but it was completely emotionless. Qing Luo. It was Mo Yuing, who had not spoken a single word ever since they left the devil class. She was dressed in a black outfit that wrapped around her petite body. There was actually a hint of mischievousness and cuteness in her. 2 small black lumps hung down from the 2 sides of his shoulders. Following Mo Yuying's footsteps, he could hear the jingle of the bell on her wrist. If it were you, you would also stop the Dharch. She looked up, her voice flat and emotionless. Yi Qing Luo's heart trembled as her pupils suddenly widened. That was right. Think about it from another perspective. If DMO Xian were to take part in a mission with unknown dangers and a high mortality rate, she would never allow DMO Xian to participate. Against the fear of the unknown, if he was alone, he could still give it a try. Now, they had each other, someone they cared about. No matter what, he could not bear to use his life as a wager. Don't we have 3 days off? Since we've registered our mercenary group today, let's book a restaurant to celebrate tonight. We can also take this opportunity to think about whether or not we should continue with this mission. Qiao Jin saw Yi Qing Luo's expression and gradually resumed his smile. He immediately spoke up to ease the current atmosphere. Yan Xiao nodded and said, 3 days of vacation, no rush, no rush. Today, the two of you should calm each other down. Tomorrow, you will also calm down. If you still insist on doing this mission tomorrow, we'll think of a way to convince the Darch. Convince? Once DMO Xian had decided on something, even she would not be able to convince him. If DMO Xian wasn't willing, she absolutely could not take a single step into Death God Castle. Just like what Mo Yuing said, DMO Xian did not allow her to go to Death God Castle. Just like how she did not allow DMO Xian to go to dangerous places, it was the same logic. Putting herself in his shoes, she could understand DMO Xian's feelings. Chapter 478. This mission was delayed because of this. Yi Qing Luo went to look for Yu Chi Peng to probe for news, while the World Group's other youngsters packed up their things and returned to Yan Xiao Yi's mansion. Mo Hanshang naturally followed along to the mansion. With the addition of a new member, Qiao Jin lent a set of clothes to DMO Xian, and the team's clothes were reduced by a few sets. After he took Mo Hanshang's measurements, he went out to find someone to make a few sets of the World Group's uniform. The Iron Blood Warrior mercenary group was gloomy. Yu Chi Peng's face was filled with hostility. As he walked, he gritted his teeth. Duke Jing followed by his side, and his hand was already bandaged properly as it hung in front of his chest. Yu Chi Peng, don't worry. This Duke will definitely let Uncle Monarch take revenge for this Duke. Duke Jing lowered his head as he took a look at his wrist. The pain of being broken still lingered in his bones. Just thinking about it made him feel a dull pain in his hand. When I get back, I'll tell Uncle Monarch about what happened today. It's just a mercenary union. As long as I give the order, Uncle Monarch will definitely send troops to destroy the mercenary union. Duke Jing raised his head proudly as he had already imagined the scene of him saying these words in his mind. The more he thought about it, the more he wanted to act on it. Idiot! A low, reprimanding voice could be heard through gritted teeth. Duke Jing's brows creased as he stared towards the direction of the voice. Yu Chi Peng, what did you say? Yu Chi Peng's heart was filled with frustration. For the sake of the predators, he had spent so much time and poured in all his efforts. He wanted to soar into the sky after registering as a mercenary group. But he didn't expect that a group of young girls who were still wet behind the ears would disrupt all his plans. Not only did the predators not soar to the top, but they also became a joke in the eyes of all the mercenary groups, losing all face. He was the young master of the Yuchi family, the leader of the Iron Blood Warriors, but he had to apologize to a little girl, bowing down to a young boy. All these were all thanks to that young lass, that Mo Hanshang. Filled with anger and unwillingness, Duke Jing, this brainless fool, was still chattering away beside his ears. Yu Chi Peng felt increasingly irritated. I say, you're The moment he said that, Yu Chi Peng suddenly came back to his senses. His eyes were gloomy and cold as he stared coldly at Duke Jing for some time, and the vicious aura around him gradually dissipated a little. There's something that Duke Jing doesn't know about. When Yu Chi Peng opened his mouth once again, his voice had already reverted back to his usual gentleness and calmness. The Mercenary Association is spread across the 4 continents of Nirvana Realm, and every main city has a Mercenary Association branch. Does Duke Jing know what this means? Duke Jing's face sunk as he was still bearing a grudge against Yu Chi-peng for scolding him earlier. He snorted coldly and turned his face away, looking very much like a child throwing a tantrum. Yu Chi-peng restrained the impatience and disgust in his eyes and continued to explain. This means that the influence of the Mercenary Association in the Nirvana realm is absolutely not inferior to the 4 great, profounder clans. It's not just the 4 great, profounder clans that have to be amiable before the Mercenary Association. Even the monarchs of the 4 continents have to give the Mercenary Association some face. In other words, even the 4 great, profound practitioner clans and the monarch had to give face to the Mercenary Association. Even if he asked the monarch to send troops to the Mercenary Association, the monarch would absolutely not agree. Chapter 479. For a gentleman to take revenge, 10 years is not too late. Yu Chi-peng spat out these few words from the slits of his teeth as his eyes were masked with a layer of viciousness. He clenched his fists tightly. For the Iron Blood Warriors, we must endure this grievance. Mentioning the Iron Blood Warriors, Duke Jing's expression eased up slightly. If we want to develop the Iron Blood Warriors, we must rely on the Mercenary Association's power. Duke Jing, it's all right to suffer a little grievance now. One day, we will get back at them. Saying that, Yu Chi-peng seemed to have thought of something as a sneer of ridicule flashed past his eyes. They won't be complacent for long. They thought that by snatching that high-grade, rare mission from my hands, they would be able to complete that mission. Ha! That mission, other than me, no one else is able to complete it. Yu Chi-peng's few words had already coaxed Duke Jing into submission. Now that he heard about the mission, Duke Jing's heart was filled with doubts. What mission is that? It's because of this mission that you're in such a hurry to bring everyone here to register the mercenary group. If it wasn't for the fact that Yu Chi-peng was in a hurry to register the mercenary group, they would have spent some time in the marketplace to subdue Yi Qing Luo and the other young ladies. Those young ladies wouldn't have appeared in the mercenary group. Iron Blood Warriors wouldn't have to face today's predicament. Yu Chi-peng gave a cold laugh. High-grade rare mission. As long as we complete that mission, our ordinary mercenary group will be able to upgrade to a bronze plate mercenary group. No matter how ignorant Duke Jing was, he had understood everything about the mercenary group. Naturally, he understood how difficult it was for a mercenary group to upgrade. One mission, and they would be able to upgrade to bronze plate immediately. No wonder Yu Chi-peng was so concerned. If that mission was snatched away by the World Group, wouldn't they be able to upgrade faster than us? Want to complete that mission just based on them. Yu Chi-peng's lips twitched in disdain. Following that, his gaze looked towards Duke Jing. If they don't accept the mission within 3 days, that mission will eventually return to our hands. These few days, just pay close attention to the Mercenary Association's mission, Acceptance Wall. This high-grade rare mission, we are determined to get it. Knowing that this mission would be able to upgrade to a bronze plate mercenary group, Duke Jing was also attentive. The moment a new official took up his post, he received his first mission. Duke Jing immediately stopped his chest and raised up that uninjured hand as he replied seriously, "All right, this Duke will definitely not take my eyes off this mission." There was also a rule for the Mercenary Union to accept missions. After accepting a mission, if the mercenary group did not confirm to accept the mission, it would be considered as giving up on the mission after 3 days. That mission scroll would also become an ordinary scroll. He would no longer receive any rewards from the Mercenary Union. This mission would then be returned to the Mercenary Union's mission receiving wall and accepted by other mercenary groups. Yu Chi-peng looked at the delighted Duke Jing, and a trace of cold smile flashed past his eyes. He wiped away the disdain towards Duke Jing in his eyes and retracted his vision. The two of them did not notice that a slender figure was standing on a treetop in the darkness. Yi Qing Luo narrowed her eyes as her lips curled into a smile, which didn't look like a smile. Sure enough, her guess was right. The reason why Yu Chi-peng registered his mercenary group today was because of this high-level rare mission. He was very confident about this mission. This kind of confidence, where did it come from? Could it be that Yu Chi-peng was really able to come and go as he pleased in Death God Castle Unscathed, and even take away the exquisite pagoda? Chapter 480. It was absolutely impossible for Yu Chi-peng to have any relations with the guards in Death God Castle. He could coerce and bribe the Mercenary Association's guards to intercept Yi Qing Luo, but it was absolutely impossible to use the same method to make Death God Castle's guards open a back door for him. Then, there was one last possibility. Exquisite pagoda wasn't in Death God Castle, or perhaps it was in Yu Chi-peng's hands. If that was the case, then things would be easy. Looked like to complete this mission, they had to start from Yu Chi-peng. After Yu Chi-peng and the rest returned to Three Spring City, they went their separate ways. Duke Jing had suffered a huge humiliation today and couldn't wait to complain to Uncle Monarch. As for the other mercenary soldiers, their morale had been greatly stimulated, and all of them revealed an exhausted look as they were sent back to the Iron Blood Warriors' main camp to rest. Yu Chi-peng headed straight for the Yu Chi residence. His expression was gloomy as his entire body emitted a terrifying vicious chi. The attendants and maids who went up to welcome him immediately avoided him when they saw him from afar, not even daring to greet him. Yu Chi-peng's courtyard was located at the south side of the Yu Chi residence, and it was the biggest courtyard in the residence. Yi Qing Luo stopped outside the courtyard. Her vision was fixed on this courtyard as her slender brows creased tightly into a bundle. Again, when she first met Yu Chi-peng, that disgusting feeling came again. There seemed to be something in this courtyard. There was something which made her extremely uncomfortable. Lass. In her mind, Old Man Tsang's voice suddenly rang. I had always felt that this Yu Chi-peng was extremely strange. Now that I see this courtyard, I discover that this courtyard is even stranger. Yi Qing Luo raised her hand and pressed it against her chest, suppressing this uncomfortable feeling. It was indeed very strange. So strange that all the pores on her body opened up. Lass, don't go in. Old Man Tsang's voice was solemn. This feeling is too strange. I'm unable to sense the exact source of this feeling. Strange, simply too strange. It's too late. Indeed, it was too late. While Yi Qing Luo was conversing with Old Man Tsang, her vision had been paying attention to Yu Chi-peng. After Yu Chi-peng entered the courtyard, the vicious chi which he emitted became even thicker. Then, as if he had lost all his strength, he staggered and half fell to the ground. His hands were on the ground, and his head was lowered, buried in his hair. After that, there was no more movement. Then, at the same time Old Man Tsang told her not to go in, Yu Chi-peng, who had not moved for a long time, suddenly turned his head. Under the strands of hair on his face, a pair of penetrating eyes, like an icy cold venomous snake, tightly coiled around Yi Qing Luo. Yu Chi-peng still did not move, but Yi Qing Luo knew. He saw her. Those eyes were eerily cold. Yi Qing Luo's heart was filled with fear. Those eyes, that gaze was definitely not Yu Chi-peng. That was not a gaze that Yu Chi-peng could have. This knowledge made Yi Qing Luo's entire body turn cold. For the first time in her life, Yi Qing Luo had this kind of fearful mentality. That kind of gaze was too terrifying. Oh no, little girl. Old Man Tsang's voice suddenly became louder. His tone was filled with panic. He is not Yu Chi-peng. This old man finally knows why this courtyard is so strange. Yi Qing Luo gave a bitter laugh. She had guessed that this person was not Yu Chi-peng. To put it more accurately, after entering this courtyard, this body was no longer Yu Chi-peng's soul. But even if she knew this horrifying truth, Yi Qing Luo had no way to leave. She believed. Chapter 481. Just what kind of secret was hidden in this courtyard? Just what kind of power was attached to Yuchi Peng's body? It was a feeling that made people feel disgusted with just a glance. He had a pair of eyes that made one's scalp go numb and body go cold. The soul in Yuchi Peng's body, that power was definitely not simple. Old man Tsang, if I were to display teleportation, would I be able to leave the Yuchi residence? Yi Qing Luo congealed her senses as she asked in her heart. No. Old man Tsang interrupted her without hesitation. You can't use your secret technique. If you're discovered by the dark forces, they'll definitely discover that the Azure Dew bracelet is in your hands. Dark forces? Yi Qing Luo's expression changed. What you mean is that energy in this courtyard is from the dark forces? Yes, the strange aura in this courtyard comes from the dark forces. It's exactly the same as the mysterious Yin Qi on your fourth sister. Old man Tsang's tone was extremely solemn. Girl, if the dark forces are involved, you'll be in trouble. Yi Qing Luo had experienced the power of the dark forces from Yi Qingling. Yi Qingling had only taken a handful of items from the dark forces, and she who had her profound jade heart destroyed was able to display the strength of a cultivator. As for Yi Qingqian, she could also make use of the dark forces' power to successfully break through to the earth profound grade. This was enough to show how powerful and mysterious this power was. Yi Qing Luo had never dared to underestimate the dark forces. But what made Yi Qing Luo puzzled was the dark forces were a dark existence in the Nirvana realm. In the eyes of many, this was an evil place. They were the aliens that had been banished from the Nirvana realm. Why did so many people choose to cooperate with the dark forces? It was understandable that Yi Qingling and Yi Qingqian would seek help from the dark forces. But why would Yuchi Peng be involved with the dark forces? Recently, the actions of the dark forces have become more and more rampant. Old man Tsang sighed worriedly. Logically speaking, the people of the Nirvana realm looked down on those who hid in the dark. If they really met, they would only forcefully expel the dark ones from the Nirvana realm. But more and more profound practitioners chose to accept the power of darkness. The dark forces were getting restless recently. After all, they were carrying out some kind of plan. The world might not be peaceful anymore. Going against him head-on, have no chance of winning. Yi Qing Luo narrowed her eyes. She stared at Yuchi Peng, who was still lying on the ground, not moving at all. He was still using that pair of sharp eyes to stare intently at her. The current Yuchi Peng was too strange, since she couldn't use her secret technique. She couldn't escape even if she wanted to. What should she do in this situation? Old man Tsang naturally understood Yi Qing Luo's current physique and profound grade the best. Yi Qing Luo indeed didn't have the ability to go head-to-head with Yuchi Peng. Lass, is there any way to contact Mo Xian? If Mo Xian was here, just a Yuchi Peng. Even if it was Yuchi Peng who had attached himself to the dark forces, it wouldn't be a problem at all. Yi Qing Luo was stunned as she slowly shook her head. It had always been Mo Xian looking for her. She had never specially looked for Mo Xian, let alone contacting him. Old man Tsang remained silent for a moment. Yi Qing Luo only felt a scorching heat on her wrist, as though it was burning her wrist. She immediately raised her hand, and on her left wrist, a circle of cherry blossom runes appeared indistinctly. The red flowing light kept flashing. What was moving was tiny wisps of flames jumping in joy. Chapter 482. Yuchi Peng moved. When Yi Qing Luo raised her wrist, Yuchi Peng moved. Perhaps it was because of the red stream of light on Yi Qing Luo's wrist, which gave Yuchi Peng a sense of threat. Yuchi Peng's palms slapped out a swift and fierce palm wind. The surrounding sand and dust were all lifted up by this airflow. His aura was like 10,000 layers of wind and waves that could devour mountains and rivers. Yi Qing Luo reacted in time, and with a leap, her figure was like lightning as she avoided that palm wind. He leaped into the air, and with a few teleportation steps, he retreated a long distance. Not knowing if it was a misperception, the killing intent in Yu Qing's eyes seemed to have become even more intense. Not waiting for Yi Qing Luo's reaction, Yu Qing's arm slid like a snake as a whirlwind rose beneath his feet. His loose robe fluttered in the strong wind. Following that, an even more powerful palm wind swept over. Yi Qing Luo's feather fan moved, intending to borrow the power of her profound qi dance to block the pressure from this palm wind. Suddenly, she heard Old Man Song's stern shout, "Girl, let's go." The burning sensation on his wrist became more and more obvious. The circle of cherry blossoms was like a tattoo branded on her wrist. The fragmented, enchanting red light formed a complicated totem. Old Man Song's voice paused. Yi Qing Luo only felt an inexhaustible energy diffusing from the cherry blossoms. It was Old Man Song who was helping her. Yi Qing Luo's fingers clenched into a fist as her feet stepped onto that set of footwork. In a split second, like a bolt of lightning, her figure had already arrived at the walls of the Yuchi Manor's entrance. She could not use the teleportation secret technique, but she could still use this set of footwork from her previous life. If she were to directly use her footwork, she might not be able to avoid Yuchi Peng's Qijin. Fortunately, Old Man Song had used the power of the Azure Dew Bracelet to protect her. Before Yi Qing Luo left the Yuchi residence, she turned her head towards that strange courtyard. At the opened courtyard door, Yuchi Peng is standing there with a pair of sinister eyes filled with killing, intent staring at her. Seeing her stop, Yuchi Peng's eyes flashed, and he strode forward as if he wanted to catch up to her. Yi Qing Luo's heart skipped a beat, and with a leap, she flipped down from the top of the wall. When he saw the courtyard from the corner of his eyes, Yuchi Peng stood at the entrance of the courtyard. His face was filled with rage, and a vicious aura overflowed. However, his legs were pressed against the door of the courtyard, and he did not have the slightest intention to catch up. When Yi Qing Luo returned to the mansion, her body was still cold and stiff. Qiao Jin and the others gathered around to ask about the results. Yi Qing Luo shook her head. What I can confirm is Yuchi Peng indeed has a way to complete the mission. I'm guessing that there's a possibility that the exquisite pagoda is with him. Impossible. And Ruo Pan tilted her head as she took out a small booklet from her bosom and flipped a few pages. I specially went to investigate on matters regarding Death God Castle. As long as an item is placed in the Death God Castle, unless the original owner of the item went to retrieve it, otherwise, the exquisite pagoda would definitely not be in the hands of enemies outside of the Death God Castle. Then, what if the owner of the exquisite pagoda collaborated with Yuchi Peng? Yen Xiao erased a hypothesis. That's even more impossible. The exquisite pagoda was a rare treasure that was recorded in the Mysterious Treasures record. Cooperating with Yuchi Peng is equivalent to giving the exquisite pagoda to the person who gave the mission. This kind of losing deal, who would be willing to do it? One must know that the world's rare treasures which were recorded in the Mysterious Treasures record were all things which were hard to find in the world. Who would be willing to hand it over to others? When Yi Qing Luo heard that, her expression didn't loosen up at all. Chapter 483. Qiao Jin's expression congealed. You mean? Just a guess. After all, if we do this, it's too obvious, and the Mercenary Association isn't a fool. Yi Qing Luo nodded her head slightly, acknowledging Qiao Jin's guess. All right, I'll go check on it later. If the one who issued the mission was related to the owner of the exquisite pagoda, then this was a huge conspiracy. Not only would it allow Yuchi Peng to gain, the exquisite pagoda would also return to the original owner's hands, and in the end, they would be able to seek compensation from Death God Castle for the theft. There was a possibility that the entire Mercenary Association would be implicated in this. From then on, the Mercenary Association would be suppressed. Yi Qing Luo narrowed her eyes as her eyes contained a deep meaning. There was one more important point. If she hadn't guessed wrongly, that energy which occupied Yu Qi Peng's body was still unable to leave Yu Qi Peng's courtyard. Yu Qi Peng only started to change after he entered the courtyard. After he discovered Yi Qing Luo, he only stood on the same spot and struck out his palm wind attack. And after she speedily climbed over the wall and left, he had no intention to chase after her. Yu Qi Peng had already made a soul exchange with the dark forces. After she discovered this secret, shouldn't he chase up to her and silence her? If it was Yu Qi Peng, if it was the dark forces' energy, even if she had Old Man Song's help, it wasn't impossible for him to chase up to her. But Yu Qi Peng didn't leave that courtyard. Lass, your thinking is very correct. Old Man Song sighed softly as though he recalled something. The reason why the dark forces are called as the dark forces is because that bunch of people in the dark forces use the dark arts which are intolerable in this world. Like your eldest sister, fourth sister, Yu Qi Peng and the others, if they wanted to cooperate with the dark forces, they would have to fork out an equivalent price to exchange for power. Yu Qi Peng used his own soul to make the exchange. Yu Qi Peng's courtyard should be the place where the dark forces' energy resides. Over there, the dark forces' energy can freely control Yu Qi Peng's body. But if he leaves the courtyard, the dark forces will leave Yu Qi Peng. Speaking of this, Old Man Song's voice turned gloomy as he revealed some worries. Do you still remember your fourth sister being controlled by that profound Yin Qi Long sword? Yi Qing Luo naturally remembered. That was the first time she came into contact with the dark forces and the power of the dark forces. If Yu Qi Peng uses this power that is used for trading and attaches it to something, he can also use the power of the dark forces outside of the courtyard. When Old Man Song's words fell, Yi Qing Luo's heart thumped. This was the same as Yi Qingling, holding on to that long sword from the dark forces. Under the situation where her profound jade heart was destroyed, she could still exert her profound energy and launch an attack. However, such a method could easily cause the host's physical body to be completely devoured. This was probably the reason why Yu Qi Peng could only allow the dark forces to attach themselves to him in his own courtyard. Yu Qi Peng does not wish to bear the consequences of being devoured. Lass, you have to be more careful during this period of time. There are suddenly so many people around you who have made deals with the dark forces. I'm afraid the dark forces will target you. I need to raise my profound rank to the Earth Profound realm as soon as possible. Old Man Tsang lowered his voice, his tone revealing a bit of helplessness. Originally, he thought that by Yi Qing Luo's side, he could slowly guide her bit by bit, consolidate his own foundation, and cultivate profound qi. Chapter 484. Based on Yi Qing Luo's current ability, she could only barely stand firm in this world. When Old Man Tsang thought of his own mission, he suddenly felt that he still had a long way to go. Qing Luo. Long Yunzhan, who was seated on the main seat, suddenly opened his mouth and called out Yi Qing Luo's name. Yi Qing Luo kept her thoughts as she congealed her gaze towards him. Are we going to give up on this mission? Long Yunzhan's voice was extremely light, and no one could tell what he was feeling. Yi Qing Luo was slightly stunned as she narrowed her eyes. Should he give up? She did not know the answer to this question. Di Zun disagrees. Long Yunzhan's index finger lightly tapped on the table. The thumping sound was like a drum beating on everyone's heart. Ripples that resembled flowing water flickered in those azure blue eyes. Faintly, an electric current flashed through them. There's a very strange feeling coming from Yu Qi Peng. As a human dragon, Long Yunzhan's perception was much sharper than that of humans. When he first saw Yu Qi Peng, Long Yunzhan sensed that kind of dangerous aura from Yu Qi Peng. He's too dangerous. If this mission involves others, our team won't be able to withstand the pressure. It's too dangerous. In other words, Long Yunjan's opinion was to give up this mission. Long Yunjan had already sensed it. Yu Qipeng's entire person was emitting that profound yin qi. It was no wonder that everyone felt disgusted when they saw him. Long Yunjan could roughly guess that behind Yu Qipeng there might be an unknown power. This power was mysterious and unfathomable. If the World Group's members were to forcefully charge in, not only would they not gain any benefits, they would also suffer heavy losses. Even if we give up on this mission, Yu Qipeng might not let the World Group off. This time round, the Iron Blood Warriors had embarrassed themselves in front of the Mercenary Guild, using the Iron Blood Warriors' face to exchange for the World Group's glory. The Iron Blood Warriors would never let the World Group off. Even if Mo Hanshang had said that, even if Mo Hanshang had joined the World Group. But that didn't mean that Yu Qipeng would let the World Group off. It was only a matter of time. Yu Qipeng was injured today. After returning to the courtyard, he would definitely borrow the power of the dark forces to raise his profound level. From eavesdropping on his conversation with Duke Jing, Yi Qingluo knew that Yu Qipeng was determined to get this high-grade rare mission. Yi Qingluo stood up as her vision swept across the hall. Looking down at the youths who were staring at them with serious expressions, he cleared his throat and calmly said, "Do you think we should give up on this mission?" The World Group did not belong to her alone. She didn't want to give up on this mission. But after witnessing Yu Qipeng making a deal with the Dark Forces, Yi Qingluo's first reaction was the World Group's brothers. She was no longer alone. Every single word and action was related to the World Group. If they were to fight with the Dark Forces, not only would she not be able to protect herself, but her brothers would also not be able to escape. She should discuss this mission with her brothers before making a decision. The youths pursed their lips and clenched their fists. Their hearts were also extremely complicated. There was no one who did not fear death and danger. Hearing Yi Qingluo, Long Yunjan, and the others' conversation, they were very clear on the danger of this mission. When they heard about Death God Castle, they already had the thought of retreating. Chapter 485. Yi Qingluo took in everyone's expressions. Her lips curled as her lips revealed a relieved smile. Let's make our decision tomorrow. Other than the danger of Death God Castle, this mission concerns another powerhouse, and the danger has exceeded what we can handle. The youthful faces of the youths all revealed expressions of terror. Other than Death God Castle, there was another dangerous powerhouse? The usually confident Yi Qingluo said these words because, in her heart, she already had the intention to give up, although they hadn't interacted with Yi Qingluo for a long time. But these youngsters had some understanding towards Yi Qingluo's character. They were very clear that the reason why Yi Qingluo chose to give up was mainly because she was worried about them. After all, this high-grade rare mission not only involved Death God Castle. Leave all these troublesome matters till tomorrow. Today is the first day of our mercenary group registration and also the day that Han Shang joins the World Group. Tonight we'll book the entire restaurant. Qiao Jin will be the host. Yen Xiaoyi stood up and her clear voice intentionally broke the heavy atmosphere in a light tone as she clapped her hands. Qiao Jin instantly stood up. Why am I the host? Clothing, food, lodging, and transportation. This lady is in charge of clothing, lodging, and transportation, and you're freaking not happy to be in charge of food. Are you a man or not? Yen Xiaoyi disdainfully glanced sideways at Qiao Jin as she gave a cold harumph. Qiao Jin's lips twitched. Listening to these words, why did it seem like they had all become Yen Xiaoyi's sugar babies, and even doubted if he was a man? Huh. Qiao Jin's thin lips tugged as his body suddenly closed in on Yen Xiaoyi as a pair of evil eyes revolved around her. Following that, he suppressed his voice as he leaned close to her ear. Whether I'm a man or not, you can try. You. Simply shameless. Yen Xiaoyi's cheeks suddenly flushed with heat. That warm breath by her ear gently landed on her skin. bringing along a man's unique scent. Yan Xiao Yi's quick-witted, beautiful eyes stared fiercely at Xiao Jin, who suddenly closed in on her. Xiao Jin's face was instantly magnified and reflected in his eyes. Having been used to the elegant and refined Long Yunjian, and having seen DMO Xian's heaven-shaking, peerless elegance, Xiao Jin's looks, which could at most be considered as pleasing to the eye, seemed extremely ordinary. At least on normal days, Yan Xiao Yi felt that way. But at this moment, this face, which could not be considered good-looking, had an indescribable, unique charm that attracted her gaze. Yan Xiao Yi only felt that her cheeks were even hotter. Her heart was actually beating wildly, uncontrollably. This feeling, what was going on? She usually had more intimate contact with Xiao Jin, but she had never felt so flustered. Ah, Sister Yan and Brother Qiao are going to kiss. A clear and sweet voice rang out. Kitty Li stood up with her hands clasped together, staring at Yan Xiao Yi and Xiao Jin with a face full of excitement. The pair of watery, pitch-black eyes shone with a luster of excitement. This voice caused the two people who were still staring at each other to come back to their senses. Suddenly, the two of them looked as if they had seen a ghost. Their eyes widened, and they pushed each other away. F***CK. Xiao Jin, have you taken a fancy to this young lady's beauty? Go away, you're disgusting. Your mother. Yan Xiao Yi, I feel even more disgusted, all right? Ah. Seeing the two of them fighting again, Kitty Li blinked her long eyelashes in puzzlement as she tilted her head and pouted her lips in puzzlement. Weren't you going to kiss earlier? Why are you fighting again? Could it be that Kitty Li said something wrong? The youngsters roared with laughter. Chapter 486. In the evening, the group arrived majestically at Three Springs City's No. 1 Inn, Heavenly Fortune Inn. In the afternoon, Xiao Jin had already booked a table at the inn. When the group arrived, a waiter went up to welcome them and led them to the large private room on the second floor. On the left side of the second floor, there were many private rooms, whereas on the right side, there were 3 large private rooms. This kind of large private room was enough to accommodate 4 large tables and 100 over people. After entering the private room, it was the youngsters' first time coming to such a place, and they started looking around as their eyes were filled with curiosity and joy. Very quickly, the waiters served the dishes which had been prepared earlier, and several jars of wine were served. Today, the brothers had temporarily thrown the matter of the mission to the back of their minds, and everyone was happy, so they didn't stop drinking. Jars of wine were served one after another. After the meal, many of these youngsters who didn't know how to drink all sprawled on the table and fell asleep. There were quite a number of them who were in a drunken state as they kept shouting the world group. The last ones who were still sober were Long Yunjian and the others. Yi Qing Luo wasn't in a good mood, so she didn't reject all the wine which the brothers offered her as her head felt a little heavy. She raised her finger and pressed on her forehead as she looked at Yi Fengyu, who was quietly sleeping beside her as she shook her head helplessly. I'll go get the waiter and get him to bring some money back to the mansion. Yi Qing Luo's body swayed as she stood up unsteadily. Long Yunjian stared at her swaying figure as his brows creased tightly as he abruptly stood up. Long Yunjian was also persuaded to drink quite a lot of wine. He drank more than Yi Qing Luo, but at this moment he didn't look drunk at all. His footsteps were steady as he chased up to Yi Qing Luo in a few steps as he held onto her arm. Qing Luo, I'll go get him. His hand held onto Yi Qing Luo's wrist. That indescribable feeling suddenly gushed up his mind. The side of his face actually felt slightly hot. The soft wrist in his palm felt completely different from the touch of Xiao Jin and the others. It made him develop a kind of impulse to hold onto this hand forever, not letting go. This thought made Long Yunjian's heart trembled fiercely as a sliver of panic flashed past his azure blue eyes. He pulled Yi Qing Luo aside and opened the private room's door. A very familiar voice came from outside the door. Have you heard? It's about the eldest miss of the Yi family. I've heard of her. I didn't expect her to look so pure and kind on the outside to be so slutty on the inside. She even wanted to steal her own sister's fiancé. Just how much does she lack men? I've long heard that there's something going on between her and Duke Ping. Previously, didn't that slut Yi Qing Luo create a ruckus at Three Springs sex entrance several times? The eldest miss of the Yi clan deliberately sought death to prove her innocence. The Three Springs sex fate has come to an end. Sooner or later, they will be kicked out of the 4 great sections, 2 little bitches, one cheap and the other reckless. These people could not conceal their disgust and ridicule towards the 2 young ladies of the Yi clan. Yi Qing Luo could tell that the little slut in their words was referring to her. This voice, it was Lu Xuelan, as well as those high, profound Class 2 students. That's not what I'm talking about. Lu Xuelan lowered her voice and said mysteriously. The other ladies immediately echoed, "Then what's the matter? Could it be that she's done something slutty again, and it's even more explosive than that illicit affair with Duke Ping in the garden in broad daylight?" Chapter 487. These ladies were all unmarried young ladies from influential families, but the words that were hanging on their lips were so vulgar that it was unbearable to the ears. Luckily, there were no outsiders around. If the customers were to hear this, these ladies would probably be reprimanded by their family's elders. Lu Xuelan gave a mysterious laugh. Wasn't Yi Qing Qian married to Duke Ping by the monarch? But based on her unrestrained nature, she has already hooked up with Second Prince. What? Second Prince? I heard that. Second Prince is preparing to request to the monarch to marry Yi Qing Qian as his imperial concubine. Lu Xuelan's tone was filled with ridicule as she spat in disdain. A vixen is indeed a vixen. Her ability to seduce men is not small at all. The few female students' expressions changed. Yan Jinfei, who was standing beside Lu Xuelan, drew in a breath of cold air. "Vice President, I heard that Yi Qing Qian's lower body was spoilt by Duke Ping. The female doctor said that she needs to recuperate for several months and cannot do that. Yi Qing Qian can still hook up with Second Prince? Who knows?" Lu Xuelan gave a light harumph. A vixen has her own ways. As the few of them were talking, they walked to the room next to Yi Qing Luo's as they pushed open the door. The group of them were just about to enter when they heard Yan Zhanfei shrieking, "Yi Qing Luo, what are you doing here?" Yan Zhanfei's foot, which had stepped into the room, retracted as she pointed towards Yi Qing Luo's direction with a shocked expression. When Lu Xuelan heard Yan Zhanfei's shriek, her vision immediately followed Yan Zhanfei's gaze. On seeing Yi Qing Luo in the open door of the room next door, her pupils swiftly widened. Earlier, their words were all heard by Yi Qing Luo. Lu Xuelan trio started to tremble uncontrollably. What happened on the second story of the library pavilion had already become a nightmare in their hearts. They hated Yi Qing Luo, but they were also afraid of Ghost Doctor, who was backing her. Ghost Doctor's disciple. If they offended Yi Qing Luo and she told Ghost Doctor, they would absolutely. Recalling the last time when Ghost Doctor asked the administrator to dig his eyes out, their bodies trembled even more. The group of high profound Class 2 students following behind didn't understand what was going on. Why was it that their high and mighty vice president, upon seeing the trash from Devil Class, was scared to such a state? "Didn't you just call me a slut quite happily?" Lu Xuelan and Yan Zhanfei's reactions were seen clearly by Long Yunzhan, who was standing beside Yi Qing Luo. These people. Why were they so afraid of Yi Qing Luo? He squinted his azure blue eyes as he glanced sideways at Yi Qing Luo, who wasn't drunk at all as his eyes dimmed. He slowly loosened his grip on Yi Qing Luo's hand, leaving that hand hanging by his side as his fingers clenched tightly, as though this was the only way he could hold Yi Qing Luo's fragrance and touch in his palm. "Say it! Why aren't you continuing?" Yi Qing Luo squinted her eyes slightly. Her expression was indifferent, but the smile on her lips revealed some eerie coldness. Lu Xuelan's face was pale as she squeezed Yan Jinfei's hand. They knew that Yi Qing Luo had the ghost doctor behind her, but the other students in the high profound class didn't know about it. One of the female students furrowed her brows in displeasure. They were students from the high profound class. Why would they be afraid of a devil class student? Even if this Yi Qing Luo was not bad-looking and had some ability. But in Heavenly Academy, did they lack talented people? So what if I said you're a slut? You still don't want to admit it? A few days ago in the academy, you fainted from the fright of the killers. I don't know who saved you, perhaps. Before you were saved, you were still. Chapter 488. The group of students behind roared with laughter. Now that you mention it, I'm curious too, Student E. You fainted at the scene where the killers were pursuing you. You look so stunning, those killers. I'm afraid they couldn't bear to kill you, just like that. Saying that, everyone's gaze towards Yi Qing Luo was filled with an ambiguous look. Their commotion attracted the attention of the customers on the first floor. They all turned their gazes towards Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo, Three Springs Sect's trash young matriarch. There was no one in Three Springs City who didn't know her. Especially for someone who had been a trash for more than 10 years, suddenly able to cultivate and even manage to enter Heavenly Academy, setting the record for the shortest time in Heavenly Academy's entrance examinations. It even caused a stir in the entire Three Springs City. Moreover, Yi Qing Luo's elder sister, Yi Qing Qian, her beauty had already spread far and wide. Now hearing these high, profound class students talking about this hypothesis, and thinking of Yi Qing Qian, who knows, the blood of the Yi family might have some unbearably lascivious genes in it. Don't say any more. Yan Jinfei shuddered when she heard the students' voices around her. She looked at Yi Qing Luo in terror and exchanged glances with Lu Xuelan before taking quick steps into the private room. If you don't want to eat, then wait outside. Those two female students echoed each other and successfully brainwashed the customers, believing that Yi Qing Luo had been humiliated by those killers and were in a good mood. Suddenly hearing Lu Xuelan's sharp cry, they had a shock. Turning their heads to look at Lu Xuelan, they saw her pale face filled with shock towards Yi Qing Luo. They frowned tightly. They simply couldn't understand why Lu Xuelan would be afraid of a devil-class trash. Towards Lu Xuelan, they usually fawned over her, but that was because Lu Xuelan was now the acting vice president. Because of Yi Qing Qian, because of Lu Shuiyu, their high profound class had fallen into Yi Qing Luo's hands. They had become the academy's joke. Now that they had walked out of the academy, in front of those people outside the academy, these two female students couldn't take it lying down. They were high, profound class students, they had excellent aptitudes, and were high up in the ranks. Why should they be suppressed by a notorious trash? Why should they become a joke in Heavenly Academy, and when they walked out of the academy, they still had to become a joke? Vice President, why are you afraid of a piece of trash? We are speaking the truth. Two female students walked in front of Yi Qing Luo and raised their hands towards her face. Slut! Slutty Yi Qing Qian's sister is also a slut in her bones. Yi Qing Luo's slender brows creased tightly as she endured the heavy feeling coming from her head. Her cold and charming eyes turned cold as she speedily moved sideways. She reached out and grabbed the wrist of the girl who was about to slap her. With a violent tug, the female student staggered towards Yi Qing Luo. Pa! A crisp sound rang out on the woman's face. In Yi Qing Luo's hand, a red feather fan appeared out of nowhere. She slapped the female student's face with her fan, leaving a deep mark on her face. Yi Qing Luo's slap was merciless. He condensed his xian qi and beat the female student until she spat out blood and a few of her teeth fell out. Yi Qing Luo raised her hand, and as though she was throwing rubbish, she threw this female student out. Mother asterisk her, I'm in a bad mood. This bunch of clowns insisted on coming up to be her venting bucket. So she wouldn't stand on ceremony. Trash. High profound class students, no matter how much they think highly of themselves, they can't change the nature of trash. Chapter 489. You. The other female student's face revealed an infuriated expression. The female student had not expected Yi Qing Luo to make a move just like that. Usually after staying in Heavenly Academy for a long time, these students had already formed a habit, not daring to make a move rashly. Yi Qing Luo had long memorized the Academy's rules in her mind. In the Academy, they indeed said that they were not allowed to fight privately, but once they left the Academy could not control them. Even if Yi Qing Luo released her profound qi and killed this female student directly, Heavenly Academy had no right to interfere. At most, it would be this female student's family who came to find trouble with her. This mouth, if it only has the ability to spread rumors, then this young matriarch feels that there's no use in keeping it. Yi Qing Luo's eyes blinked as she gave a dainty smile. She waved the feather fan in her hand as she walked slowly and stopped in front of that female student. That slightly waving feather fan suddenly opened up. A sharp blade slid down from the fan's handle. Yi Qing Luo's fingertip moved, and that blade stuck onto the female student's mouth. She was smiling sweetly and innocently, but her eyes were icy cold, as though it was covered with frost. The female student's body stiffened, not even daring to move her eyes. After meeting Yi Qing Luo's charming eyes, her entire body turned stiff, and the expression on her face revealed a terrified expression. Yi Qing Luo had addressed herself as this young matriarch, which meant that her beating them up now had nothing to do with the Academy. She was using the identity of 3 Springs, sex young matriarch, to give this slap and to destroy their mouths. After hearing what Yi Qing Luo said, Lu Xuelan and the other 2 who were sitting in the next room subconsciously recalled. That day on the 2nd story of the library pavilion, Ghost Doctor also used this kind of casual tone to ask the administrator to dig out his eyes. In their hearts, they were overwhelmed with shock. These were all high profound class 2 students. If these 2 female students offended Yi Qing Luo, there was a possibility that the entire high profound class 2 would suffer a calamity. Ghost Doctor's character didn't care if they were the Academy's elites or not. To stand up for his own disciple, or whatever, it was just a matter of mood. You want to... The female student felt the coldness by the side of her mouth. She didn't dare to move. She blurted out 2 words. With a slight twitch of her facial muscles, the female student felt a stinging pain on her cheek, as if some kind of liquid was seeping out. She was so shocked that she didn't dare to speak again. This Yi Qing Luo was simply a lunatic. Yi Qing Luo would really kill her. How did we spread rumors? The female student who was thrown out stood up, clutching her chest. A few of her teeth had been broken, so when she spoke, her words were extremely strange. Her voice was leaking air, and her pronunciation was unclear. However, he could still hear the rage in his voice clearly. You're the same as your slutty elder sister. The female student raised one hand and pointed at the youngsters who were lying unsteadily in the private room, and then pointed at Long Yunjian, who was beside Yi Qing Luo. Aren't you on intimate terms with the Overlord? Why is she with another man now? Does Dizun know that we're having a secret meeting and drinking here? She suddenly laughed, as her face was filled with ridicule. I don't think you and Dizun have any relationship at all. You only know how to use this face of yours to go around seducing men. Before she could finish her words, Yi Qing Luo didn't move. Instead, it was Long Yunjian who was beside her, who had moved to the front of the female student in a blink of an eye. His long arm stretched out, as his 5 fingers strangled the female student's neck. That pair of azure blue eyes was as resplendent as a lantern, sparkling with excitement. Under that radiance, a thick, murderous intent shot out. Your mouths, indeed, can't be taken. Chapter 490. The last word after it was clearly said. A miserable shriek was heard from the female student's mouth. The entire Heavenly Fortune Inn was especially silent. That miserable shriek, accompanied by the sound of bones breaking, was extremely clear. The crowd looked at Long Yun-jan in disbelief. Some of the timid customers who couldn't stand the sight of blood directly bowed their heads and retched. There were quite a number of spectators who subconsciously rubbed their lower jaws. What did they see? Long Yun-jan's large palm rose from the female student's neck and wrapped around her lower jaw. Without any hesitation, his 5 fingers suddenly clenched tightly. That female student's lower jawbone was shattered and all her teeth were broken. Blood flowed down her mouth. That miserable shriek was her last sound. Long Yun-jan saw the blood stains on his palm and his elegant brows creased slightly as he wiped his hand on the female student's body. Following that, just like what Yi-Ching Luo did earlier, he casually threw her out. The crowd drew in a breath of cold air. Who on earth was this young man? His actions were so decisive. The female student who was under Yi-Ching Luo's feather fan instantly felt her legs go soft and could no longer stand properly. That miserable shriek was too horrifying. If the one whose lower jawbone was crushed was herself. The female student didn't even dare to think about it. Her entire body collapsed onto ground. That sharp blade drew an extremely shallow scar on her face. The female student didn't have any reaction, as her eyes stared blankly in front as she panted heavily. What's the matter? Is a fight about to start? Qiao Jin's loud voice was heard from the room. Not long later, he and Yen Xiao-yi walked out. The crowd's vision shifted onto the both of them. Your clothing, why? Among the high profound Class 2 students, someone noticed their clothing. Following the open door, they looked inside. The entire room was filled with dozens of young men and women, all dressed in the same uniform. Apparently this was a team. Shangguan Fang stood in the crowd as his pupils suddenly opened wide. These are devil classes. Students. Ever since Yi-Ching Luo and Shangguan Liuli had a conflict, Shangguan Fang especially investigated everything about Yi-Ching Luo. According to the investigation, Yi-Ching Luo had been a cripple for more than 10 years. Other than a lame maidservant, she had no one close to her and no friends at all. And after she got to know DMO Xian and started cultivating, she did not get close to anyone or talk to anyone. But now there were more than 60 people sitting in the room. To be able to drink and chat merrily, it was definitely not an ordinary friendship. The only explanation was these people were the devil class of students, and after Yi-Ching Luo joined the devil class, she made friends with them. As soon as he said this, no one in the surroundings believed him. Although the group of people in front of him were drunk and in a mess, he could more or less see the restless, profound energy flowing around their bodies. These people were definitely not weak. How could they be a bunch of trash from the devil class? Yi-Ching Luo sneered as she lowered her eyes and swept a glance at the terrified female students who were kneeling by her feet. She then raised her eyes and looked at those people from high profound class 2. Since you're here at the inn to eat, then eat properly. If the food can't stop your mouths, I don't mind helping you to do it. Finishing her words, she lifted her leg and kicked the female student towards the direction of high profound class 2, like she was kicking a ball. The female student was caught by a group of students. At this moment, no one dared to open their mouths to say a single word. Lu Shuelan and Yan Zhanfei hid in the private room, not daring to come out. Chapter 491. Pure colored nine-tailed fox? When the customers heard this exclamation, they all stuck their heads out to take a look outside the inn. At the entrance of the Heavenly Fortune inn stood a snow-white fox with its head raised proudly. That white fox's size was almost the height of the inn, and its 9 white tails kept swaying. The white fur swayed along with the wind like a white wave. Under the heavens, there was only one pure white nine-tailed fox, the Overlord's sacred beast, Little Nine, which meant the Overlord had appeared. Everyone started to stand up as they rushed to the entrance. Little Nine's appearance caused the entire Three Springs city to go into an uproar. Everyone surrounded Little Nine, looking up at the imposing and majestic nine-tailed fox, their hearts filled with reverence and respect. Little Nine represented not only the one and only sacred beast in the world, it also represented the Overlord. Yi Ching Luo, who was standing on the second floor, also saw Little Nine standing at the entrance. Those youngsters who were still conscious behind her all stuck their heads out to take a look. This was the first time they had seen the sacred beast nine-tailed fox. That elegant figure, that arrogant temperament. It was indeed the Overlord's sacred beast. These youngsters all started to shout out as their faces, which were flushed red from the alcohol, were filled with adoration towards Dmo Xian, yearning towards the nine-tailed fox. Long Yunjan's face was calm as he was expressionless. A pair of azure blue eyes stared intently at Yi Ching Luo's side, looking at the nine-tailed fox below. One could tell that when Yi Ching Luo saw Little Nine, her pair of frosty eyes started to circulate with a gentle glow. That devastatingly beautiful, yet flamboyant, enchanting face. The contours were filled with gentleness, as though, through Little Nine, she saw another person, another man who occupied her body and mind. By his ears, the youngster's fervent cheers and reverence towards Dmo Xian made Long Yunjan feel even more frustrated. All his changes were seen clearly by Chao Jin, who was by his side. Chao Jin saw the usually expressionless Long Yunjan, who would not reveal any emotions on his face, was actually filled with rage. Chao Jin's heart jumped. He knew that Long Yunjan had feelings for Yi Ching Luo, but he had not expected that after he found out that Yi Ching Luo was already together with Dmo Xian, before he could dispel this thought, extinguish this thought. If this feeling caused a rift between the two of them, this was not good. Standing on the standpoint of brothers, Chao Jin naturally hoped that Yi Ching Luo would choose Long Yunjan. However, as a bystander, he could see everything clearly. It wasn't just him. All the brothers in the world group could tell. Yi Ching Luo's unique feelings towards Dmo Xian was something that none of them could compare to. Long Yunjan had no way to come between Yi Ching Luo and Dmo Xian. Chao Jin's expression was solemn. He was about to walk over and stand between them, but she saw Long Yunjan's elegant brows crease slightly as he abruptly grabbed Yi Ching Luo's wrist once again as he leaned close to her ear and whispered, "What's a nine-tailed fox riding a blue dragon is even cooler than a nine-tailed fox." Yi Ching Luo was stunned as her vision slowly met Long Yunjan's face with a question mark. Ha! Chao Jin. The moment he said this, Long Yunjan realized what he had said. He was dumbfounded. How could he say such a thing? He was actually jealous of a nine-tailed fox. Long Yunjan's hand shook as he let go of Yi Ching Luo's wrist. Chao Jin leaned forward in time as his elbow knocked backwards, pushing Long Yunjan away by an inch. Chapter 492. Yi Ching Luo replied within, "Oh," as she didn't doubt Chao Jin's explanation. At this moment, Yi Ching Luo didn't have any other thoughts to guess the meaning behind Long Yunjan's words. Her vision was congealed on Little Nine. Little Nine was here. Then where was Dmo Xian? Was he still angry? Yi Ching Luo actually felt a little anxious. She pursed her pink lips and was about to jump down from the second floor's railing. But she saw a black-robed young man walking out from the surrounding crowd as he stopped beside the nine-tailed fox. He raised his head and stared at the nine-tailed fox. "Little Nine, I'll go up to invite her." "Woo!" Little Nine's sharp mouth moved as it gave off a soft moan. The young man stepped into Heavenly Fortune Inn, and when he raised his head, he saw the young lady standing on the second floor's railing. His brows creased as his face revealed disdain. But he still bore with this unhappiness as he leapt into the air and landed not too far away from Yi Qing Luo. The sudden appearance of the young man attracted the attention of Qiao Jin and the others. Almost in an instant, Qiao Jin and the others blocked in front of Yi Qing Luo. High profound class of students' expressions had a huge change as all of them retreated a few steps, attempting to hide behind their classmates. This young man was too strange. They couldn't tell his profound grade from him, but from him there was a kind of imposing manner which made one involuntarily submit to him. This imposing manner made the World Group's youngsters crease their brows in puzzlement. Why did it feel so familiar? This young man was able to stand beside the nine-tailed fox and even converse with her. No matter how they looked, he wasn't simple. Wind. Suddenly, a clear female voice was heard from Qiao Jin's back. Yi Qing Luo pushed aside the few people who were blocking in front of her as she squinted her eyes and fixed her gaze on that young man for a long time. This face wasn't what she remembered Wind to look like, but this imposing manner and this figure it should be Wind. Wind. Qiao Jin was astonished. This young man, Yi Qing Luo, knew him? He's Ah Xian's guardian. Yi Qing Luo explained as she looked towards Wind. You and Little Nine. Overlord asked me to fetch Miss Yi for a gathering. Wind directly interrupted Yi Qing Luo's words. Gathering? Yi Qing Luo's slender brows creased slightly. If DMO Xian wanted to see her, he would always appear beside her directly. Since when did he need to send Little Nine and Wind over to create such a huge scene? Wait a minute. A battle formation? Yi Qing Luo's breathing suddenly stopped as her heartbeat sped up. DMO Xian wouldn't be doing it on purpose, right? Purposely creating such a big scene, sending out protectors and little Jiu under the watchful eyes of everyone. He invited her to a gathering. This was a declaration to the entire Three Spring City. She, Yi Qing Luo, had a close relationship with the Overlord. Her thigh was the Overlord. Could it be DMO? Xian had always been by her side and had seen the conflict between her and the high profound class students. In his way, David protected her. Yi Qing Luo's charming eyes were filled with a faint smile as she looked towards Qiao Jin and the others. I'll head over first. Qiao Jin and the others waved their hands. Yi Qing Luo leaped down from the second floor and landed beside the nine-tailed fox. That soft white tail curled up Yi Qing Luo and placed her firmly on its back. The surrounding people started to draw in breaths, as well as those pairs of envious gazes. The one and only sacred beast, nine-tailed fox, had become this woman's mount. Those students from the high profound class were even more dumbfounded, especially those two female students who provoked Yi Qing Luo. Their faces were ashen. Earlier, they were still saying that Yi Qing Luo and DMO Xian had no relationship at all. Now, DMO Xian had sent his own war pet and guardian over to personally invite Yi Qing Luo. That incomparably valuable war pet even voluntarily became Yi Qing Luo's mount. Chapter 493. Wind, aren't you leaving together? Yi Qing Luo looked at Wind, who was still standing on the second floor, as she asked. Wind's expression seemed to have turned gloomy as he snorted. Other than the Overlord, no one else can sit on Little Nine's back. Yi Qing Luo's pupils contracted slightly. The hand which was on Little Nine's back gently brushed past the soft white fur on its back. Other than DMO Xian, no one else could sit on Little Nine's back. But from the first time she met Little Nine, she had been accepted by Little Nine. Was it because of DMO Xian? Why did she have a feeling that she had been reserved by DMO Xian right from the start? Just thinking about it made her a little shy. Ah Feng's words once again shocked the surrounding onlookers. Other than the Overlord, no one else could sit on the noble nine-tailed fox's back. But Yi Qing Luo was automatically rolled onto the back by the nine-tailed fox. This was enough to show how much the Overlord valued her. What is the relationship between Yi family's 7th Miss and the Overlord? I heard that they are master and disciple, but this feeling doesn't seem like master and disciple. Yes, 7th Miss. Didn't she set a marriage agreement with Duke Ping, but her sister stole her away. It's only been a few days, and yes, 7th Miss and the Overlord. As they discussed, the discussion changed the topic. Not knowing who started it, someone actually started to compare Yi Qingjian and Yi Qingluo. Yi Qingjian's slutty behavior had spread far and wide. The surrounding crowd all believed that Yi family's young miss and Yi Qingjian were slutty. But because of the Overlord's face, they didn't say it out loud. Yi Qingluo laughed lightly as she dug her ears. Her half-squinted eyes reflected a sharp blade as she looked at the commoners who were gathering below. The relationship between me and the Overlord has nothing to do with you. If this mouth only knows how to make irresponsible remarks, then I don't mind leading my brothers to seal your mouths tightly. Her sonorous and powerful voice was extremely dignified. Every single word was like a huge bell, striking heavily on their eardrums, their hearts. The surrounding 100 miles around heavenly fortune fell into silence. The silence that surrendered to Yi Qingluo's majestic aura. Yi Qingluo scoffed and patted Little Nine's back. "Little Nine, let's go." As his voice fell, a stream of qi rose from Little Nine's 4 limbs. In the blink of an eye, he had already leaped into the sky, turned into a white shadow, and disappeared from everyone's line of sight. At this moment, Ah Feng glanced sideways at the hyper-found class students and finally stopped at Lu Xuelan. Lu Xuelan's entire body trembled. She was terrified and her eyes were filled with shock. However, Ah Feng only paused for a few breaths before looking away. "Lord Dizun asked me to tell you to bring our drunk brothers back to the attic to have a good rest." After saying this, Ah Feng turned around and jumped down from the first floor, leaving the Tianfu indirectly. Everyone was shocked. What did these people have to do with the Overlord? Why does it feel like they have a very close relationship with the Overlord? Shangguan Fangyi, who had previously suspected that they were students of the Devil class, also turned pale. So, these people were all DMO Xian's men. It was DMO Xian who had sent people from the Imperial Palace to form a team for Yi Qingluo. Qiao Jin and the others were first stunned, as they didn't understand what was going on. Their brains spun, and they immediately understood the Overlord's intention. If the hyper-found Class 2 students found out that they were students of the Devil class, then the Academy would definitely take notice of the Devil class. If before the interclass competition, the director forcefully allocated them into different classes, then all the hard work that the Devil class had put in for so many years would be meaningless. Rather than being guessed that they were students of the Devil class, it would be better to be misunderstood as people from the Imperial Palace. In this way, at least in future, when they accepted the mercenary group's missions, they wouldn't need to think of ways to hide. Chapter 494. Little Nine came to a stop in a garden filled with beautiful flowers. Yi Qingluo had never been to this place before. As far as the eye could see, there are all kinds of flowers blooming brilliantly. The air was filled with the fragrance of flowers. When Yi Qingluo turned back, Little Nine's figure was no longer by her side. Yi Qingluo surveyed the surroundings, and there wasn't a single figure in sight. What was DMO Xian up to? Yi Qingluo pursed her lips and was about to follow the path ahead to look for DMO Xian. Suddenly, she felt a weight on her shoulder and a warm body completely wrapped around her in his arms. That fresh and elegant sandalwood scent, mixed with the fresh floral scent, seeped into her nose and was especially intoxicating. It was just a day of not seeing each other. When she felt the warmth of the man behind her, Yi Qingluo actually had a kind of... The empty space in her heart was filled up. Satisfied. Extremely satisfied. Obviously. It wasn't the first time they had not met for such a long time. But this time she missed him so much. Perhaps it was because this time she was the one who made Dmo Xian leave. Not knowing why, Yi Qingluo's eyes were slightly red and the tip of her nose was a little sour. She bit her lips and struggled to turn around from the man's arms. Raising her head, a pair of watery eyes stared deeply at the man's peerless face. This look made Yi Qingluo stunned. His face was as handsome as usual. His eyes were glistening, suffused with a current that could take one's soul away. But, not knowing why, Yi Qingluo felt that there was a trace of exhaustion between his brows. A very, very light exhaustion. This kind of him looked extremely lazy. Seeing Yi Qingluo staring at him in a daze, Dmo Xian's thin lips curled up as his fingertips caressed Yi Qingluo's face. "Why, looking at me in a daze?" His deep voice was sexy and magnetic, like a feather, constantly teasing Yi Qingluo's heart. "I thought you are angry with me and not willing to talk to me." Yi Qingluo hugged his waist and buried her face in his chest. Dmo Xian's large palm covered the back of Yi Qingluo's head as his thin lips curled into an even more seductive arc. "I also thought I would be angry with you." The hand which he circled around Yi Qingluo's waist increased in strength. He thought he would be angry. He was angry that when Yi Qingluo made the decision, she had never thought about his feelings. He was angry that Yi Qingluo didn't listen to his advice and insisted on taking the risk. He was angry that Yi Qingluo didn't care about her own safety, making him worried but helpless. He was angry, but he could not bear to be angry. The moment he forcefully stopped Yi Qingluo from accepting the mission and turned around to leave, he regretted it. But Dmo Xian knew that if he were to turn back, Yi Qingluo would not hesitate to choose to proceed with the mission immediately. "You're too competitive." Dmo Xian sighed softly as his 5 fingers plunged into Yi Qingluo's hair. As his fingertips gently caressed her hair, "I know, even if I really stopped you from going to Death God Castle, your heart is still unable to let go of this mission." Yi Qingluo pursed her lips and had no words to refute. Indeed, in order to not let Dmo Xian worry, she could give up this task. But in her heart, she could not truly let go of this task. In her world, there was no such thing as giving up. Perhaps it could be said that she had never met anyone who could make her give up on her decision. "If you're unhappy, I can." Yi Qingluo buried her head and rubbed against his chest. It was just a mission. It could not be compared to Dmo Xian. Chapter 495. Dmo Xian's fingers were slender and fair. Perhaps it was because he had been cultivating for many years. His fingertips were slightly calloused. When it rubbed against Yi Qingluo's tender lips, it actually brought along a burst of electric current. Yi Qingluo only felt a ball of raging fire burning on her lips. His pure and deep peach blossom eyes that were like obsidian rippled with ripples. Yi Qingluo turned her head away, trying to avoid Dmo Xian's fingers, but he increased his strength as his fingertips rubbed against her lips. His fingertips were faintly hooking her lips. Yi Qingluo's throat tightened and she had just opened her mouth when his fingers brushed past her pearly white teeth. This action made Yi Qingluo's cheeks flushed red. She flew into a rage out of embarrassment as she opened her mouth and bit the man's fingers as she stared at him resentfully. Biting the man's fingers, her words were unclear. "Stop fooling around." Dmo Xian's face was filled with an unconcealable smile. The tiredness between his brows was also dispelled in his smile. He lowered his head as he got closer to Yi Qingluo. His smile was filled with evilness. His voice was filled with bewitchment. "What is Lil Luo trying to say?" The warm breath sprayed onto her neck. Yi Qingluo couldn't take this kind of teasing as both her hands struggled to push against the man's chest. "It's not that I don't rely on you, but at the same time when I rely on you, I want to improve, want to become stronger, want to become your reliance." A soft sigh was heard from the top of her head. Dmo Xian helplessly let go of Yi Qing Luo as his face was filled with a helpless expression. I knew it. I would eventually be convinced by you. A piece of white cloth landed into Yi Qing Luo's hands. Yi Qing Luo was puzzled as she opened up the white cloth. When she saw the pictures on the white cloth, she was completely dazed. This is... Yi Qing Luo's breathing suddenly turned hurried as her fingers clenched the white cloth tightly as she raised her eyes and stared at Dmo Xian. This is Death God Castle's map! This was a piece of map. On it was a detailed drawing of a place's layout. Even the mechanisms and arrays in every place were clearly marked. My entire life has been ruined by you. Dmo Xian helplessly encircled Yi Qing Luo in his arms again. His shimmering peach blossom eyes seemed to be carrying thousands of spring water. Although his voice was filled with helplessness, it was possible to hear the strong doting under the helplessness. This kind of pampering could only be enjoyed by Yi Qing Luo alone. Yi Qing Luo's heart seemed to be pinched by something. She stared at the map in her hand. Yi Qing Luo held a thin white cloth in her hand and felt as though it weighed 1,000 kilograms. It was so heavy that she found it difficult to breathe. After he stopped her from taking the mission, he left angrily. He wasn't really angry. He just didn't want to talk to her. Instead, he drew the entire map of Death God Castle for her, to reduce the chances of her getting hurt. Clearly, he was extremely worried and didn't want her to go to Death God Castle for this mission. But in order to make her happy, in order to let her by the mission, he had to put his heart at ease. In the end, he compromised. How could she not be moved by such a man? How could she not fall for him? He was always like this. His casual words and actions for her always stirred her heart, making her unable to think about anything else. Ah, Xian, thank you. Out of thousands of words, only this sentence was able to express the feeling in her heart. Yi Qing Luo's arms circled around Dmo Xian's neck as she proactively offered her pink lips. She shut her eyes and a crystal, clear tear rolled down from the corner of her eye. Chapter 496. A Kiss Lingering. Dmo Xian seemed to want to knead her into his bones and blood as his arms wrapped around her tightly. Yi Qing Luo's cheeks were flushed red and her eyes were like silk as she fell into his arms. A pair of slender hands that were wrapped around Dmo Xian's neck rested weakly on his chest. In her ears, the man's deep voice, as if tasting a jar of sweet wine, so seeping into her heart, making her dizzy, making her intoxicated. Lil Luo, don't thank me. Why don't you repay me with your body? Yi Qing Luo's pupils suddenly widened. His heart violently trembled and then began to beat faster. She stared blankly at Dmo Xian's pair of affectionate eyes. That scorching gaze was like a flame, burning her body and mind. He was serious. Was this a marriage proposal? Did he mean that he wanted to marry her? Yi Qing Luo's cheeks flushed red and those curly long eyelashes fluttered like butterfly wings. What was concealed was a pair of shy and charming eyes. Marrying Dmo Xian was something that she had never thought about. He only felt that it was enough for two people to be together, to know each other, to know each other, to love each other. Little Luo. Dmo Xian's slender fingers clasped onto her lower jaw, and that jet black pupils gradually turned dense. Don't tell me you've never thought of becoming my wife. Yi Qing Luo blinked her eyes innocently. We haven't known each other for long, and we don't have a complete understanding of each other. Talking about marriage. Isn't it a little too early? It's not early. Without any hesitation, he directly interrupted Yi Qing Luo's words. From the moment I got together with you, I had already decided to accompany you for life. That voice was sonorous and firm. Yi Qing Luo's heart was shaken once again. His heart was in a mess. So messed up that he couldn't think of anything else. As expected, Qiao Jin and the others were right. Beside Dmo Xian, She was like a woman, a real woman. He had always been independent and was used to being alone. But in front of DMO Xian, there was a woman's emotions and mentality. This kind of feeling only DMO Xian could give her. Yi Qing Luo's slender fingers curled up DMO Xian's robe bit by bit. She raised her head and gazed at DMO Xian's smooth chin, the elegant lines. Xian, how long? Is a lifetime. However long you want, I'll let you. DMO Xian caressed her cheek. His fingertips were slightly cold, and his pair of peach blossom eyes were so gentle that it seemed as if water could be squeezed out. His gaze became increasingly fiery. Yi Qing Luo's cheeks turned even redder. It was as long as he wanted it to be. She knew that DMO Xian was never one to make promises recklessly. The fact that he said those words represented his determination. Yi Qing Luo's heart was filled with warmth because of DMO Xian's words. She held on to DMO Xian's hand. Her 5 fingers interlocked with his. Her smiling eyes gazed at the hands of the 2 people who were holding each other's hands. She smiled and said, "All right, I'm willing to marry you." DMO Xian was overjoyed. His large palm grasped Yi Qing Luo's little hand. His long arms tightened, his long and narrow peach blossom eyes slightly raised. That head of cloud-like black hair was unbound and scattered over his half-exposed chest. His entire person looked extremely seductive. "Lil Luo, are you really?" Before he could finish his words, but he saw Yi Qing Luo's pink lips curled up slightly as a crafty look flashed past her lively eyes. "But there's a prerequisite to marry you." DMO Xian narrowed his eyes, realizing that Yi Qing Luo's following words were absolutely not what he wanted to hear. Chapter 497. DMO Xian's status was too distinguished. As DMO Xian's wife, the mistress of the imperial palace, she must have the ability to match her status, even if DMO Xian didn't mind. But it didn't mean that the people in the imperial palace didn't mind. Just like Wind, she could tell that Wind didn't have any good feelings towards her. It could even be described as disdain. She didn't blame Wind for looking at her in this way. It was because Wind valued DMO Xian and the imperial palace that he developed enmity towards her. If she had the ability to match with DMO Xian and had the qualification to become the mistress of the imperial palace, Wind would definitely not develop such feelings. "Xian, wait for me. When I have the qualification to stand by your side, when I have the qualification to become the mistress of the imperial palace, when everyone believes in me, then let's get married, all right?" Yi Qing Luo's lips rose slightly. Her eyes were filled with a luster, revealing a resolute look. She and DMO Xian were actually the same type of people. From the moment they decided to be together, she had no intention to leave DMO Xian. The current them was only lacking a status. Today's words, I will remember it in my heart. Yi Qing Luo's eyes, like the vast firmament, was dyed with the luster of stars, that resplendent, that unwavering. She stretched out her other hand and twirled a lock of DMO Xian's black hair. That wispy black hair curled around her slender and fair fingers. "DMO Xian, I'm not a generous woman, and I'm narrow-minded. If you're willing to wait for me, no matter how long the road ahead is, I will always be by your side and will always pester you." DMO Xian's narrow long eyes curved as it grew deeper, gazing at the lady in his arms. No matter how resplendent it was, it couldn't be compared to the dazzling gleam in her eyes. Her cheeks were flushed, as her face was filled with shyness, but she had to stubbornly put on a fierce look, saying words that moved his heart. Unfortunately, he loved this look of Yi Qing Luo's, loved to the bones. He had always felt that Yi Qing Luo had a kind of magical power, that magnetic attraction, enticing him bit by bit to place her in his eyes into his heart. Just as DMO Xian was gazing deeply at Yi Qing Luo's fierce look, his body suddenly leaned backwards. He was pushed into the bushes. Shortly after, the woman's soft and delicate body covered his. Because of the two people's actions, the flowers in the surroundings lifted up circles of flower petals and drifted with the wind. Yi Qing Luo sat on his abdomen with one hand on his chest. Her 5 fingers gripped tightly onto his lapel. So, DMO Xian, you can't escape. DMO Xian's arms circled around her waist as he laid on the ground. His jet black hair spread out, which made his face look even more magnificent. His lips curled as he said, word by word, Yi Qing Luo, you'd better be mentally prepared. I, DMO Xian, will never let you off in this lifetime. Yi Qing Luo nodded and imitated the way he used to tease her as she caressed his lips. Then, let's continue pestering each other till death. The two of them looked at each other and smiled warmly. Her fingers hooked onto DMO Xian's chin as she bent down, and with a sweet smile, she kissed his lips. This kiss was filled with passion. At the same time in the mansion, Long Yunjian and the others who were sober, along with a few waiters from Heavenly Fortune Inn, carried the drunk youngsters back to their respective rooms. With the identity of Imperial Palace's people, there was no need for them to be secretive, not daring to let others know where they were staying. And it was because they were related to the Imperial Palace that the waiters' attitude towards them was diligent and earnest, almost not daring to accept money. Seeing the eager waiters coming and going, Long Yunjian's expression turned darker. Chapter 498. Long Yunjian's brows creased slightly as he heard the voice and looked over. He saw Qiao Jin standing by his side, with one hand on his shoulder. He glanced sideways and met Qiao Jin's eyes. His elegant brows creased even tighter. Qiao Jin's gaze towards him was unprecedentedly solemn and serious, as though he had seen through his soul, seeing through his deepest thoughts. This feeling of having all his thoughts seen through made Long Yunjian very unhappy. His heart produced a flustered feeling. In his heart, what secret was he hiding? Why was he so against the feeling of Qiao Jin seeing through him? Group leader. Qiao Jin opened his mouth solemnly as the fingers on his shoulder tightened a little. There's something regarding Qing Luo I want to discuss with you. Long Yunjian pursed his lips as he nodded indifferently. The two of them walked into Long Yunjian's room, one after another. Qiao Jin's expression was calm as he stared at Long Yunjian without blinking. Do you want to develop the world group? Long Yunjian narrowed his eyes, not understanding the meaning behind Qiao Jin's words. You're the belief of the students in Devil Class. After Qing Luo came to Devil Class, she's the hope of Devil Class students. Qiao Jin walked to the chair and sat down. His voice was very soft and indifferent without any emotions. I've always thought that the reason why we train Devil Class students is to make them strong, to let them believe in themselves, that they're not trash. Qiao Jin raised his eyes and stared at Long Yunjian, who was standing by the side with his hands behind his back. Although I know that the reason why you train Devil Class isn't so simple. Long Yunjian was stunned. Between them, they had never asked each other the reason why they stayed in Devil Class. From first meeting, to getting to know each other through Discord, and finally becoming brothers, everything seemed to be going with the flow. This was the first time they were discussing the reason why they trained Devil Class. No matter what your reason is, I know that your heart towards everyone is sincere. Qiao Jin continued, You're not someone who is good at expressing your thoughts, perhaps even you yourself. Don't know your own thoughts. Long Yunjian's heart trembled fiercely. Qiao Jin actually understood him so well. Devil Class, or the World Group, we are a team, a collective. We have belief, we have hope. With the both of you leading Devil Class, the World Group, it's destined to be extraordinary. Qiao Jin's gaze gradually became gentle. Devil Class is able to be so harmonious now, forming the World Group. All these are all because of Qing Luo's hope. His deep eyes flickered slightly, and he placed his hands on the wooden table. His face, which could not be considered handsome, was solemn and respectful. "Ah, Jean, we have a good brother. A very, very good brother." Xiao Jin stared into Long Yunjan's eyes as he enunciated each word clearly. There were some things that he couldn't say too clearly. If Yi Qing Luo didn't have Dmo Xian by her side, he could remind Long Yunjan, or even help Long Yunjan chase after Yi Qing Luo. But there were no ifs. Their relationship with Yi Qing Luo could only stop at the level of brothers. Only by using these two words would they be able to walk for a longer period of time. Perhaps it was because Xiao Jin emphasized the word brother. It hinted at something to Long Yunjan, and Long Yunjan seemed to understand something. The pair of azure blue eyes flickered with a slightly dim luster. His eyelids drooped as his voice was cold and emotionless. And Qing Luo is indeed a very good brother. Indeed very good. If it wasn't for Yi Qing Luo's appearance, Devil Class would probably still not know what unity was until now. There would still be that mentality of the weak being prey to the strong. It was Yi Qing Luo, this ray of hope, that still entered Devil Class. They were brothers, which meant they could only be brothers. Chapter 499. The next day in the mansion, the youths were dressed neatly and lined up in the courtyard, listening to Yan Xiaoyi's slogan as they did their morning exercise. When Yi Qing Luo and Dmo Xian walked into the mansion hand in hand, they heard a series of impassioned, young voices. Vaguely, a clear voice could be heard. "Do you usually have to start training so early? I want to train with you. I really didn't choose the wrong person. I made the right choice to join this world group." Stepping into the courtyard, Zhang Xian saw rows of youths stretching their bodies. Mo Han Shang changed into the world group's uniform and stood in the middle of the group. It seemed that after last night's meal and drinking, his relationship with his brothers had deepened a lot. When the youngsters heard the commotion, they all turned towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. When they saw Yi Qing Luo and Dmo Xian, although the youngsters didn't stop what they were doing, but their pair of eyes were staring straight at Yi Qing Luo. Finally, it landed on her and Dmo Xian's interlocked fingers. The Varch. Xiao Jin took the lead to go up as he cupped his fists towards Dmo Xian as he greeted him. Following that, his vision shifted onto Yi Qing Luo as his eyes were filled with ridicule. "Qing Luo, does this mean that you've settled the Overlord?" Yi Qing Luo rolled her eyes at him. Not returning for an entire night, a man and a woman alone, tisk tisk. Yan Xiao erased her eyebrows and laughed. This tease caused the youths who were still doing their morning exercise to laugh out loud. Dmo Xian's face was plastered with human skin. His facial features were ordinary, but the imposing manner of his whole body was awe-inspiring. He looked calmly at the youths in the courtyard and smiled. "We are all brothers of Lil Luo. There is no need to be so courteous. Just call me Brother D." The youths were dumbfounded. All of them stopped their stretching actions and stared at Dmo Xian in shock. He seemed to be unable to believe what he had just heard. Calling D Zun his brother? Are you sure this isn't an illusion? The youths could no longer remain calm. What a joke! Who could remain calm when they could be brothers with His Majesty, the Overlord, who was so high and mighty that everyone wanted to ride on his coattails? They were able to get to know the Overlord and see the Overlord himself. That was all thanks to Qing Luo. Even Xiao Jin was stunned by the words Brother D. Just as everyone was staring at Dmo Xian, their faces filled with worship, they heard a cold voice. Lord D has already agreed to the World Group to accept this high-grade rare mission. This voice was the guild leader's voice. The youths all turned their heads to look at Long Yunjan. In the hearts of the youths, Long Yunjan was their faith, their boss. When they heard Long Yunjan still call him D Zun respectfully, they naturally suppressed the excitement they felt from calling him brother. After hearing Long Yunjan's question, the smiles on the faces of the youths gradually froze. Advanced Rare Quest. The mission to Death God Castle. Yi Qing Luo gave them a night's time to think. but they were so drunk last night that they didn't even think about it. It was just that when they woke up this morning, they endured the hangover and discussed it together. But in his heart, he was still uncertain. The moment Long Yunjian brought up this topic, the youth started to get nervous again. Yes, Xian agreed. Yi Qing Luo's vision swept across the courtyard. Those young and tender-looking, slightly pale faces. Have you all thought it through? When the youngsters met Yi Qing Luo's gaze, they all lowered their eyelids. They had been undergoing closed-door training in Devil Class for the past few years. Actual combat training was merely going to Heavenly Training Forest for simple, practical training. They were confident that they were no longer the waste in the past. But after all, they were just kids who hadn't seen the world. Chapter 500. Go. Why shouldn't we go? Under the silence, Tong Ziqing's brows creased tightly as her cold expression was filled with determination. We are members of the World Group, members who are going to become the #1 mercenary group in future. The World Group. It's just a mission, and we're afraid of this and that. Her tone was filled with impatience. Didn't you say that we should all work together and work hard to improve? Why is it that when we meet with any danger, all of you become like cowards? After Tong Ziqing finished her words, those youngsters all raised their heads as their emotions were complicated. I agree with Sister Ziqing's words. And Ruo Pan, who was standing at the corner of the group, took a step forward. Her pair of gentle eyes stared at Yi Qing Luo without blinking as she spoke in a serious tone. We are Devil Classes students, members of the World Group. If a mission is enough to scare us until we stop here, then there's no meaning in us establishing the World Group. The youngsters looked at each other in dismay as their eyes sparkled. Their gazes subconsciously shot towards Qiao Jin and the others. They were used to having the 4 members of the class committee making decisions for them, and this habit had already seeped into their bones. But Qiao Jin and the others didn't open their mouths to speak. Qiao Jin and the others only stood there, as though this matter didn't concern them. Their hearts started to palpitate apprehensively. Seeing these youngsters' ardent gazes, Qiao Jin and the others finally understood why Yi Qing Luo intentionally let these youngsters choose on their own. As Devil Classes students, members of the World Group, following the group leader's orders and listening obediently was indeed a good thing. But they were humans, an individual, everyone's brothers. They didn't know how to think for themselves, only following orders and relying on their decisions. If this went on, the World Group would only become a tool to complete the mission, without the youngsters' vitality and passion. At this moment, Qiao Jin couldn't help but sigh at Yi Qing Luo's valiance. In just a short 1 month, she had found out all the problems which they hadn't been able to find out for the past few years. Furthermore, she used the simplest and crudest method to correct these problems. In the courtyard, there was a deathly silence. Yi Qing Luo let go of Dmo Xian's hand as she slowly walked towards the youngsters. Her charming eyes seemed as though it was decorated with stars, extremely dazzling. This wisp of dazzling light was like a sharp blade that deeply sliced towards the enemy in their hearts. Soon after, he heard your cold voice floating in the courtyard. This time we didn't go home. Instead, we gathered here and formed a mercenary group. What is the purpose of this? The youths looked at each other. After a long time, a young man's voice trembled. It's for actual combat training. Someone said the first sentence, and a few others followed. In order to participate in the interclass competition 8 months later, I'll form a mercenary group to accept missions and enrich my combat experience. In order to make myself stronger so that I can take the championship in the interclass competition 8 months from now. As they spoke, the expressions on their faces gradually changed from uneasiness to a complicated one. Slowly it became quiet. It was until the young man quietened down when Yi Qing Luo bore an extremely shallow smile as she nodded her head. Yes, for actual combat training, to enrich your combat experience, to make you stronger. Her smile was obviously very shallow. Her tone was clearly indifferent. Her face was clearly devoid of emotion. Chapter 501. That's right. Ridicule, ridicule. Yi Qing Luo's words didn't conceal these two kinds of emotions at all. This kind of emotion made these youngsters who had strong self-esteem unable to tolerate it. Death God Castle is even scarier than the interclass competitions. Yi Qing Luo's slender brows rose slightly as she gave a smile which didn't look like a smile. Do you think that as long as one is able to cultivate some profound qi and train according to the rules every day, that person would be called a strong one? The youngsters bit their lips as they wanted to rebuke her, but Yi Qing Luo totally didn't give them a chance to speak as she directly continued. The so-called strong, which one of them hadn't walked on the tip of the blade. Why do I need to organize everyone to undergo actual combat training? Haven't the days that you've spent in the past taught you about the weak being prey to the strong, and the strong being revered, facing a real battle that's risking your life? From the moment you chose to cultivate profound qi, choosing to be above others, concentrating on training, you're destined to tread on this path of bloodshed. This path is paved with the blood and corpses of numerous weaklings. If you don't want to become one of these corpses and don't want to become someone else's stepping stone, then work hard to make yourself stronger. The only way to live on is to become stronger, because from the moment you chose this path, there's no way of retreat. Either you die or the enemy dies. Sentence after sentence, it was like a bombardment. The youngsters' faces revealed an ashamed look. They were no longer the waste that they were in the past, thinking that one day they would stand in front of those people who had once humiliated them, teaching them a harsh lesson. Thinking about it now, this kind of thinking was really too childish. They thought that they were already a strong one, but when they met danger, they were so afraid that they wanted to retreat, so they were simply cowards. Elder sister is right. Kitty Lee clapped her little hands furiously as her sparkling eyes looked at Yi Qing Luo with adoration. How can there be such a good thing under the heavens, wanting to be above others without putting in any effort? Which strong one hasn't walked out of bloodshed? Profound cultivators who haven't experienced life and death are not fit to be called strong. These words made the youngsters feel even more ashamed. Yi Qing Luo remained silent for a long time. It wasn't until these youths' faces were completely red and they wished for nothing more than to dig a hole to hide in that she slowly said, "Now there's finally an opportunity before your eyes. Do you want this opportunity or not? Yes, no matter how dangerous it is. If you haven't tried, how do you know it won't work?" The hot blood in the hearts of the youths was completely ignited. If he didn't want to pay, how could he get anything in return? If he was afraid of everything, how could he talk about becoming strong? He wanted to comprehend, to advance, to become stronger. He had to comprehend everything when he was close to death again and again. They followed Yi Qing Luo and established the world group. Wasn't for actual combat training. Wasn't it to become stronger? Because of a death god castle, they actually forgot their original intentions. However, this opportunity is not something that everyone can have. Yi Qing Luo looked at everyone's excitement, no longer revealing the timid look when she heard about Death God Castle yesterday, as her lips curled into a smile. Her gaze swept past the young faces in front of her, as she imprinted those youngsters' unwavering gazes into her heart. Death God Castle is very dangerous, and there's a possibility that we might meet with another wave of unknown danger. I can't bear to send you to your deaths for nothing. When Yi Qing Luo said that, the youngsters were all stunned. What did she mean by this? Chapter 502. Looking at the youngsters' puzzled gazes, Yi Qing Luo gave a faint laugh. This mission naturally has to be done, but the members who take part in this mission must be at Mystic Profound 5th grade and above, and their skills must be assessed by Jin Zi and Xiao Yi. Ah, for a moment the youth's expressions changed. It wasn't easy to reignite my blood. It wasn't easy for them to boil over. This is very draining of willpower, okay? Before you have enough strength, relying on your hot-bloodedness will only be courting death. After Yi Qing Luo saw this mission, she already had this idea in her heart. If one was mystic profound grade 5 or above, and their skills and overall strength weren't bad, even if something really happened, they would at least have the ability to protect themselves. At that time, she would summon Shiju and bring everyone away. At least it could ensure everyone's safety. Yi Qing Luo ignored the despondent and frenzied expressions on their faces. From now on, mystic profound 5th grade cultivators, stand on my side. More than 60 young men and women began to stand apart. Not long later, Yi Qing Luo's side stood around 20 over people. On the other side, the youths were looking at them pitifully, but there was nothing they could do. If they didn't have enough strength, they would only be a burden. It didn't matter if he lost his life, but if he harmed the team and caused the mission to fail, then the loss would outweigh the gain. These 20 over people were thrown to Qiao Jin and Yan Xiao Yi for them to personally test these people's skills. Under the training of Long Yunjian and the class committee for the past few years, these people's profound level and their own strength were rather compatible. After about a morning, the youths who would participate in the rare high-level mission had been selected. 22 youths were chosen. Adding Qiao Jin, Yan Xiao Yi, and Yi Qing Luo, there was a total of 25 people. Don't be depressed. After Yi Qing Luo had chosen these people, she then looked towards the other side, looking at those youngsters who were looking at them anxiously. We only have these 3 days to earn the mercenary group's honor points. After these 3 days, it won't be so easy for us to earn honor points. They were going back to the Heavenly Academy 3 days later. Although they could leave the academy without anyone noticing, if a large group of students were to leave too many times, it would inevitably attract the attention of the academy. It was too dangerous. They had just established a mercenary group, so honor points were extremely important. If their honor points remained stagnant for a long period of time, the mercenary guild might even demote them or cancel their right to establish a mercenary group. Moreover, this advanced rare mission might not even be completed. An ordinary mercenary group can accept 5 missions at the same time. Leader and Yu Ing will lead the remaining members. Or you can choose to lead the team in groups to accept low-level and mid-level missions. A smile finally appeared on the faces of the youths. Fortunately, they did not have to sit in the courtyard and wait. They could also contribute to the mercenary group. Towards Yi Qing Luo's suggestion, the few of them had no objections. The young members naturally had no objections. After assigning the tasks, Yi Qing Luo and the other 25 people also started to take action. Yi Qing Luo rejected Mo Xian. She knew that if Mo Xian was around, the team's chances of safety would increase. But she was even more clear that if any accident were to happen, Mo Xian would not hesitate to choose to bring her away. Moreover, with Mo Xian around, these members wouldn't have that kind of pressing sense of life and death. Mo Xian didn't refute and just handed little Nine over to her. In order to help Long Yunjian transform into his dragon form, Chi-Chi had exhausted all of her holy beast powers. She had been in a deep slumber for a long time and showed no signs of waking up. Although Shiju was a mirage beast, it was only a low-tier mirage beast after all, and its beast age was only that of a child. Chapter 503. Yi Qing Luo didn't reject Little Nine. Little Nine turned into a white furball as it sat on Yi Qing Luo's shoulder. That furry feeling made Yi Qing Luo miss Chi-Chi, who was still in deep slumber in the pet space. Not knowing when Chi-Chi would wake up from her deep slumber, Yi Qing Luo sighed softly. Jin Zi, how's the investigation on the matter which I asked you to investigate? On the way to Death God Castle, Yi Qing Luo turned her head to look at Qiao Jin, who was walking behind her. Qiao Jin shook his head slowly. The Mercenary Association's secrecy is done very well. The person who issued the mission cannot be found out. He paused for a moment as he glanced sideways at Emo Han Shang, who was in the group, and said, "As for the person who issued the mission, Han Shang doesn't know." Emo Han Shang's lips pursed as his handsome face revealed a sliver of guilt. "I'm sorry. Although I'm the young patriarch of the Mercenary Association, but regarding the matters of accepting and issuing the mission, I have no right to know." "No matter." Yi Qing Luo waved her hand. "You've joined the World Group, so you're an ordinary member of the World Group. I don't wish to make use of your special authority to seek for anything for the World Group." Emo Han Shang's eyelashes fluttered as his handsome brows seemed to be covered with a layer of moisture. As compared to a lady's eyes, it was even more radiant. His lips twitched, and after some time he finally said, "Thank you." Yi Qing Luo smiled as her eyelids drooped down tightly. "But I discovered that Yu Qi Peng is very concerned about this mission." Xiao Jin recalled the matter which he met with when he was inquiring about it. "Duke Jing is keeping watch at the Mercenary Association, waiting for us to give up on this mission so that he can take it up in time." Yu Qi Peng's apparently confident look indicated that he absolutely had a way to complete this mission. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so persistent on this dangerous mission. Anyone with eyes who saw Death God Castle knew that this was a mission with a slim chance of survival. Yi Qing Luo's fingers suddenly clenched into a fist. She had personally witnessed Yu Qi Peng's confidence. She wanted to head over to Yu Qi Peng's place to find out more information. But upon recalling that mysterious and unfathomable dark forces, Yi Qing Luo dispelled this thought. As compared to Death God Castle, that strange dark force was much more terrifying. If Yu Qi Peng learned from Yi Qingling and gathered the dark force's energy onto something, even though it was brought along, Yi Qing Luo, it was too dangerous. Suddenly, a thought struck her and her eyes widened. Yes, the power of the dark forces. Logically speaking, the owner of the exquisite pagoda shouldn't dare to play tricks on the Mercenary Union. If the one who issued the mission for the exquisite pagoda wasn't the owner of the exquisite pagoda, Yu Qi Peng was so confident, perhaps he was relying on the power of the dark forces? Did the dark forces agree to help him complete this mission? That mysterious organization, everything mysterious to be able to make a soul exchange with one noble person after another without anyone noticing, and to bestow upon them a strange power. If he recalled the Death God Castle and took the exquisite pagoda, it was not impossible. This dark force was really too strange. Was it because the exquisite pagoda was no longer in the Death God Castle, or was Yu Qi Peng relying on the power of the dark forces? Wait a minute, the exquisite pagoda should still be in Death God Castle. Yi Qing Luo took out the map that Mo Xian had specially drawn for her. She had an eidetic memory, so she could quickly construct the entire map in her mind. But Death God Castle's terrain was too complicated. Chapter 504. The map that Mo Xian drew was specially made in the simplest way, allowing her to swiftly remember everything on the entire map. Even if it was a tiny mechanism, he would mark it clearly. Yi Qing Luo's fingertips gently touched the white cloth. Every stroke of the drawing seemed to still have his warmth left on it. This man, he was extremely meticulous. He went to Death God Castle and explored the entire Death God Castle, which also proved that Mo Xian had the ability to come and go as he pleased in Death God Castle. He was even able to activate all the mechanisms and arrays and was still safe and sound. Death God Castle was totally unable to contain Mo Xian. Mo Xian passed the map to her, which meant that the exquisite pagoda was still kept in Death God Castle. The reason why Yu Qi Peng was so confident was because he intended to borrow the dark force's power. Actually, Mo Xian could totally take out the exquisite pagoda and pass it to her to complete the mission. But Mo Xian didn't do so. Instead, he drew the map in detail. Mo Xian was paving the way for her, because Mo Xian understood her. The meaning of the mission was to train the world group and also to train herself. If Mo Xian took out the exquisite pagoda for Yi Qing Luo, This action wasn't really for her own good, so it would lose the meaning of taking on the mission. It was just like what she had said before, a real strong practitioner, which one of them hadn't walked on the blade's edge. There wasn't such a good thing under the heavens to reap rewards without putting in any effort, not coming into contact with danger, not touching upon life and death. Then, how would one comprehend the real path to becoming strong? Her fingertips slowly rubbed against the lines drawn on the map. Suddenly her fingers paused. Her vision congealed on the white cloth that was marked with red ink, marking the location of the profound chi fluctuation protection mechanism. But the color of this red ink seemed a little wrong. One side was light, while the other was slightly darker. She frowned as she took a careful look. There were indeed two types of seriousness, and this lump of red ink was obviously intentionally drawn on, as though it was to cover something. Cover. That light shade of red? Yi Qing Luo's heart suddenly tightened as she felt a suffocating feeling in her throat. Her 5 fingers clenched the white cloth tightly as she pressed it against her chest. This red, could it be blood? In order to cover this blood stain, he specially used red ink to confuse her vision? Was DMO Xian injured? When she saw the exhaustion in DMO Xian's eyes in the garden, it wasn't an illusion. He was injured, but he still forced himself to support his body, pretending that nothing had happened. No wonder. When she mentioned rejecting him to tag along, DMO Xian agreed so readily. He was probably afraid that she would discover the injuries on his body. A warm feeling spread from the bottom of his heart. It followed his heart and flowed in his heart. His heart seemed to be filled with something. It was very, very warm. She tightened her grip on the map as if it was a treasure and put it into her bosom. She must have exhausted all her luck to be so lucky to obtain DMO Xian's love. Even if it was for DMO Xian, she would protect herself well and return to see him alive. DMO Xian, wait for me, Death God Castle, hidden in the depths of the forest. As far as the eye could see, there were trees everywhere. However, only within a 100-mile radius around Death God Castle, there was not a single blade of grass. That huge Death God Castle was like a majestic main city as it stood in the middle of the empty land. In the vicinity of Death God Castle, there were 10 odd magical beasts with an acute sense of smell walking around. No wonder it was the world's #1 treasured place. No wonder it was the place where numerous world-famous thieves, even the #1 thief saint, had fallen.